Good afternoon, everyone. I make that 2 o'clock, so I'm going to open the meeting. My name's Tom Senior. I'm the lead officer for the West Midlands Police and Crime Panel. I've also got with me Sarah Fradley, the Overview and Scrutiny Manager, and Sam Yarnell, who's also a Scrutiny Officer. The first item on the agenda is the notice that this meeting will be recorded and broadcast, so please bear that in mind. I have apologies from Councillor Alex Dale, the substitute is Councillor Henley. I also have apologies from Amy Mullins-Downs, Ravinderjit Bria, Councillor Holt, but we have Councillor Cole as the substitute.
I'm afraid that's a mistake. Councillor Holt's here. I'm Councillor Holt.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I'd had you down as an apology. I do apologise. And we've also just received apologies from Councillor Knowles. As this is the first meeting of the municipal year, the next item is to elect a chair of the meeting, and that chair will be in post for the full municipal year of 25-26. So if I could invite any nominations for chair. Thank you. Do we have anyone who seconds that? Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other nominations for chair? No? Okay, thank you. In that case, Councillor... Oh, sorry. Didn't see you. If you'd like to...
Good afternoon, members, and thank you for attending the meeting of the West Midlands Police and Crime Panel. So the next agenda item will be to elect the Vice Chair. Can I please have some nominations? Members, can you please use your mics when you are speaking? Thank you. Yes, Councillor Rashid.
I nominate Jackie Taylor for Vice Chair.
Are there any other thank you, Councillor Member, who seconded that. Are there any other nominations for Vice Chair? Okay, could we show a show of hands then for all those who appoint Jackie Taylor as Vice Chair? Thank you. Welcome, Jackie. Thank you. Okay, members, item agenda 5, which is declarations of interest. I must remind members that if you have got a relevant pecuniary or other registrable interest from any business to be discussed at the meeting, it must be disclosed. If a member has disclosed pecuniary interest, that member must not participate or vote on any matter and must not remain in the room unless they have been granted a dispensation. If other registrable interests have been declared, a member may speak on the matter only if members of the public are also allowed to speak. Otherwise, you must not take part in any discussion. If it is a sensitive matter, members do not have to disclose the nature of the interest, just that they have an interest. Has anyone got any interest to declare? Okay, I take that as none. Thank you. Item agenda 6, which is to note the police and the crime and panel membership for the year 2025-2026. Sarah, are you taking this item, or would you like me to read the note? Is it just a note? That's just a note that, members. Thank you. Agenda item 7, minutes of the previous meeting. That was held on the 24th of March 2025. Are we all in agreement that these minutes are accurate? accurate? Does anyone want to raise any? Okay, we'll take them as read and approved. Thank you. If you could show a show of hands for that. Thank you very much. Item 8, which is the Police and Crime Panel Action Tracker. I shall just, Sarah Fradgley will talk us through that. Thank you, Sarah.
So members will note there are two items on the action tracker that can be discharged today. So the first related to the financial support for the panel to assist in its scrutiny of the precept. Since the papers were published, we've now had agreement from the Birmingham City Council finance team that they will be able to provide that independent support for the scrutiny of that task, so that item can be discharged. And the second item on the action tracker relates to neighbourhood policing. Perhaps members would want to discuss that under the work programme, because that's one of the items that we would like to programme during later in the year. Thank you. So if members are happy, the recommendation is that both of those items are discharged.
Can I take that as a yes? Thank you. Thank you, panel members. Item agenda 9, a public question time. I don't believe there are any questions from the public at all. Item 10, which is a panel arrangement and rules of procedure. And this will be a report from the panel lead officer. Thank you.
Just to say that these documents come to you on an annual basis. They are the two documents that govern the running of the panel. The first one is the panel arrangements, which is an agreement signed by the 7 districts of the borough. And that panel arrangements document sets out the functions and the membership of the panel and the arrangements in terms of budgets and officer support for the panel. The second document covers those more procedural items that cover the election of chair, the vice chair, how the panel meetings are run, the voting arrangements, etc. So both of these documents are here for you to note and endorse for the remainder of the year.
Thank you, Sarah. Item 11, which is a West Midlands Police and Crime Panel Expenditure 2024-2025. Again, this is a report from the panel lead officer.
So this again is an annual report which sets out the expenditure incurred by the panel during the 24-25 year and the proposed budget for the 25-26 year. So again, this is an annual report brought forward to the panel for noting. So if members agree, you're asked to note the expenditure for 24-25 associated with the administration of the panel and note the forecast spend for 25-26.
Thank you, Sarah. Panel members, are there any questions on that item? Can we all agree then to the recommendation within the report, which is the panel is asked to note the expenditure for 2024-2025 associated with the administration of panel, providing regarding the comments. Yeah? Forecast. Thank you very much. Okay, item 12, and this is Police and Crime Commissioner Introduction and Performance Update. Simon Foster, welcome. Good to see you here, and I see that you brought the team with you. And over to you for your report.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. The cover report for this agenda item sets out that this is the introduction and update from the Police and Crime Commissioner, and that's in 2 parts. And part A is the Police and Crime Commissioner verbal introduction, and part B is the Police and Crime Commissioner delivery of his Police and Crime Panel update, and that includes the Police and Crime Plan delivery update and the Police and Crime Plan performance brief. I'm going to be speaking to the introduction and also the PCC update. And my colleague, Simon Down, who is Head of Policy at the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, is going to be speaking to the Police and Crime Plan Delivery Update and the Police and Crime Plan Performance Brief. So, Chair, I congratulate you on your re-election as Chair of the West Midlands Police and Crime Panel, and indeed I also congratulate the new Vice Chair on her election as well. I want to take this opportunity to extend my gratitude and thanks to the previous Chair and to those members of this panel that have now moved on for the help and support that they provided during the course of their tenure. It was much appreciated. And I welcome all returning and new members to the Police and Crime Panel. It's a pleasure to see you all. Some of you, of course, I have met before, and others I already know. However, some I am meeting for the first time. I'm looking forward to working with all of you in the time to come to collectively ensure that we can effectively and efficiently provide a police service and a wider criminal justice system that is collectively committed to preventing and tackling crime, promoting community safety, and ensuring justice, safety and security for the people of the West Midlands. I have no doubt that each of you will bring with you to the panel your own particular background, experience and knowledge. And I'm pleased also this afternoon to be able to extend an invitation to all panel members to visit the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and West Midlands Police for a briefing about matters of interest to the panel members, and we'll aim to identify a mutually convenient venue, date and time for that as soon as possible. By way of an introduction, both in terms of me personally and my role as Police and Crime Commissioner, we know, do we not, that crime, policing, community safety and criminal justice are matters that are of significant public interest and concern, and I don't think I would need to take too long to persuade any of the elected representatives present in this chamber of the significance of those issues, because if, like me, as I'm sure many of you do, you go out, meet members of the public, you knock on people's doors, you attend ward forums, residents' meetings, you access, however you do, the media, those issues around policing, crime, community safety and criminal justice, as we know, are always matters of significant public interest and concern. And of course, it is often said, is it not, that the first duty of government is to keep its people safe and secure. From my personal perspective, I started my career in the law over 45 years ago. I was a legal aid solicitor for 35 years. I was a partner in a law firm for 22 years. Access to justice, equality before the law, and the rule of law are fundamental principles upon which our democracy is based, and I am committed profoundly, deeply and passionately to those principles, both professionally in my previous career, and they underpin my role as Police and Crime Commissioner. In fact, I've dedicated my entire adult professional life to the justice system. That's a period, as I say, of over 45 years. And that is why, for those reasons, I fought as long as and hard as I did to retain the role of the democratically elected and directly accountable Police and Crime Commissioner within the West Midlands, because I believe in the need for a democratically elected and directly accountable Police and Crime Commissioner whose one and only top priority is preventing and tackling crime. Because to be the voice of the people, you have to be elected by the people. The Police and Crime Commissioner model ensures that there's an effective and efficient accountability and governance of policing on behalf of the people, and crucially, the people of the West Midlands have a vote to determine who they want to represent them as their PCC. It's necessary to secure a democratic mandate, as all of the elected representatives in this room will understand the basis of, so that the PCC is accountable to the people, as opposed to a mayoral model in which a mayor simply appoints a deputy mayor to be responsible for policing and crime. And that deputy mayor would, in reality, only ever be accountable to the mayor and not democratically elected by and directly accountable to the people of the West Midlands. I was elected in May 2021 and re-elected in May 2024. So I am in my second term, and I have now been in the role for over 4 years. Do bear in mind that as a Police and Crime Commissioner, I represent the entirety of the West Midlands. But of course, what I will say today and what I will speak to you about over the months to come, whilst you serve as members of this Police and Crime panel, will apply as equally to your own local areas as it does to the breadth of the West Midlands. My constituency, of course, is the equivalent of 26 parliamentary constituencies. There are 3 million people in my constituency. It's the second largest constituency of any politician in the country. Only Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, has a larger constituency than the Police and Crime Commissioner of the West Midlands. Of course, the Mayor of the West Midlands has an equivalent constituency. So that gives you just some idea, I suppose, of the breadth of the role. Important to understand that accountability, governance, oversight and scrutiny are not new for policing, because since the Metropolitan Police Act of 1829, which I guess introduced what we might describe or understand as a modern police force, there has always been that level of oversight and scrutiny. The 1835 Municipal Corporations Act introduced watch committees. The 1964 Police Act introduced local authorities and police authorities. So there has always been that accountability, governance, oversight and scrutiny of policing. And of course, important to understand, my role as Police and Crime Commissioner is not about operational day-to-day policing, because that is the responsibility of the Chief Constable. It is not the responsibility of a Police and Crime Commissioner. It's about democratic accountability. It's of course about representing the people, not the police, because I'm elected to represent the people of the West Midlands. I work very closely with West Midlands Police. We have very many similar aims and objectives, of course we do, but it's important to understand I am here to represent the people and communities of the West Midlands. And as Police and Crime Commissioner, I have extensive and wide-ranging duties and responsibilities, and they include preparing the Police and Crime Plan for the West Midlands, setting the police budget. In 25-26, that's £790 million. I have tax-raising powers because I set the police precept, which is that part of your local council tax that goes towards paying for local policing. And then in the widest possible sense, a Police and Crime Commissioner is there to hold the Chief Constable and the police service to account on behalf of the people of the West Midlands. But in addition to that, I have the power to appoint and dismiss the Chief Constable. I have responsibilities around the community safety partnerships, the violence reduction partnership, victims commissioning, support services, criminal justice. I have responsibilities in connection with complaints, our independent custody visitors. I have responsibilities around the police estate and procurement as well. And I also chair the West Midlands Combating Drugs and Alcohol Partnership and the West Midlands Road Safety Strategic Group as currently is. And in terms of my national responsibilities within the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, I have a national lead role for serious violence and counter-terrorism as well, because I chair the National Counter-Terrorism Strategic Board. So that is just a very brief introduction to my role as Police and Crime Commissioner. So moving on to my Police and Crime Commissioner panel update. You've all been provided with a paper in connection with that, but I will just take you through some of the main highlights within that paper. I hope because it's been circulated to all of you before the meeting. You've all had an opportunity to have a chance to read that before the meeting. But as I always say in relation to that police and crime panel update, that update is only a selection of the work that myself and the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and my team have been engaged with. The summary that I provided you with is an update since the 24th of March, which is the last time I reported to the panel, which was the date of the last panel meeting that took place. And of course, if people want more information about the work that I am doing or that of my office, people can always consult the news section on the Police and Crime Commissioner's website. And I've provided a link there for people for their convenience. So, Tally-Ho Training Centre. I'm pleased that in March, West Midlands Police officially opened its all-new tactical training centre in Birmingham, and that facility is where officers will be trained in policing riots, responding to chemical attacks, using tasers, and much more. And that new state-of-the-art training facility represents a significant investment in maintaining and improving the capabilities of West Midlands Police. Officers will receive the highest quality training, enabling them to effectively respond to the complex challenges they face in keeping our communities safe. I'm continuing with my campaign around retention of fixed penalty road safety fines. I want all road safety fixed penalty fine revenue to be retained in the West Midlands rather than sent to central government, so that we can invest it in road safety in order to prevent and tackle crime and antisocial behaviour on our roads, and with the aim of reducing the number of people who are tragically and avoidably killed and seriously injured on our roads as a consequence of road traffic collisions arising out of careless, dangerous and reckless driving. And it's essential that revenue generated is retained within the West Midlands. That would enable us at the moment to have about £2.3 million available to us to invest in road safety. We need the government to step up and back our commitment. Police and crime plan, 26th of March, I launched my new police and crime plan for the West Midlands at a launch event in Sandwell, and that brought together key partners and stakeholders, community leaders and members of the public. And that comprehensive plan represents my vision for justice, safety and security in the West Midlands. It covers the entire spectrum of policing and crime, as you would expect, but some key top priorities: rebuilding community policing, preventing and tackling violence, and in particular violence against women and girls, and youth violence and knife crime, and improving road safety. Car theft index. I publish a car theft index every year. The purpose behind that is to ensure that there is that police data available to members of the public to highlight the issue and to ensure vehicle manufacturers go further and faster to improve vehicle security. But I also want to inform drivers which cars are less likely to be stolen, so that they can use that information to inform their own consumer choice and decisions when buying a car. And you can see that I've included a table in the update for your information. In April, I was very pleased to announce the appointment of my new victims advocate, Natalie Weroj, MBE, who is here to present to you on the next agenda item. As the new region's victims advocate, the rights and welfare of victims and survivors must always be at the forefront of policing and our wider criminal justice system. And I know that Natalie's determination, resilience and strength in the face of unimaginable adversity and trauma is truly inspiring. And I'm confident that Natalie will be a powerful champion, a powerful advocate for victims and survivors across the West Midlands. And we're already working together in order to deliver on that. And you'll hear a little more detail about that from Natalie later this afternoon. In terms of neighbourhood policing, pleased to report that on the 10th of April, we received approval and sign-off to recruit 150 additional officers to be allocated into neighbourhood policing. The Chief Constable and I bid into the Home Office. We approved that. We received that approval and sign-off, and that was following a joint bid from us. In addition to those officers being deployed into dedicated neighbourhood roles, We are also redeploying 139 existing officers into neighbourhood policing and also recruiting 20 new PCSOs as well. And that is important in the West Midlands because increasing neighbourhood policing numbers is particularly crucial for us because we're a force that still has about 700 fewer officers and 500 fewer PCSOs than we did back in 2010. And that, of course, is despite many other forces having more police officers than they've ever had in their force history, something which is deeply inequitable, it's deeply unfair, it's inexcusable and unacceptable. So this is a contribution towards righting that wrong, but we need that accessible, reassuring and visible presence out on the streets, keeping people, families, businesses and local communities safe and secure. We've secured a new joint working agreement to regulate the average speed enforcement across the West Midlands. We previously had 3 agreements, one for Birmingham Solihull, one for Coventry, one for the Black Country. We now have a consolidated agreement across the West Midlands. Why have we done that? For 3 reasons. 1, to put average speed enforcement on a more sustainable footing. 2, with a view to expanding the network of average speed enforcement cameras across the West Midlands. And thirdly, to increase the capacity for enforcement as well. So, as you know, there's a commitment across the West Midlands, collectively amongst all of us, to halve the number of people killed and seriously injured on our roads by 2030, and with the aim of delivering on Vision Zero by 2040. Operation Fearless, some of you might be aware that that was rolled out in Erdington. It's now moved to Birmingham Southside, and the Birmingham Southside phase is the latest development in connection with the Operation Fearless story, and I funded Operation Fearless to the sum of almost £1 million of proceeds of crime in order to deliver a team of 20 Operation Fearless officers, and they have most recently commenced work in Southside area of the city centre around particularly focusing in on some key crime types that are of particular challenge in those areas. And it's pleasing to see the positive difference that that investment in policing is making to areas like Erdington and Southside. And in addition to that, Operation Snap, third-party dashcam reporting, we've transformed that in the West Midlands over the past 2 years or so. Just by way of example, a couple of years ago, there were about 350 submissions from members of the public via Operation Snap, third-party dashcam reporting. There are upwards of about 2,500 submissions from members of the public now, and that results in positive outcome rates in relation to those submissions of about 84%. So that is anything from a warning letter right up through to prosecution and criminal convictions and fines and endorsements and even driving bans as appropriate. In addition to that, I've ring-fenced funding for that particular project. I secured Safer Streets funding to ensure we had 6 dedicated officers to that particular project. This financial year, I've invested a further £165,000 to uplift that from 6 dedicated officers to 9 officers within that Operation Snap team. Canley Police Base. In May, I joined officers at the brand new police base in Canley, following their relocation earlier this year, and we have 3 local neighbourhood teams and 24/7 emergency response officers that have moved to that impressive new hub in Bow Court. That was back in March, with the former 60-year-old station building officer Harry Parks Road, which has now been disposed of because it was no longer fit for purpose. Weapon surrender bins, I've committed to doubling my investment for weapon surrender bins from £50,000 to £100,000, and they will be doubled from about 30 weapon surrender bins to about 60 weapon surrender bins. And just to give you an idea of the effect, the impact of those weapon surrender bins, so just between January and March, about 1,700 dangerous weapons were removed from the streets of the West Midlands as a consequence of that network of about 30 weapon surrender bins we have in the West Midlands currently, and that's why I'm investing further in that scheme. Birmingham Pride, was pleased to attend and support Birmingham Pride in 2025 and renew my commitment to preventing and tackling hate crime across the West Midlands in all its forms. I invest £150,000 a year in the West Midlands to a West Midlands-wide dedicated hate crime victim support service, offering emotional and personal and practical support to people who have been subjected to hate crime in all its forms. Victims Code, I've launched a major campaign to ensure compliance with the Victims Code within West Midlands Police and the wider criminal justice system. Being a victim of crime can be a traumatic experience, and that's why we have a Victims Code with 12 rights, and they are now statutory rights, and we have to ensure that those Victims Code rights are available to people, that there is compliance, there is enforcement around those Victims Code rights, and people are benefiting from them as victims of crime. And I think Natalie will be talking to you in about a little more detail about that campaign. CCTV, West Midlands Police, as you perhaps do or don't know, have a dedicated CCTV database that members of the public and businesses can register their details on. And I'm pleased to announce that so far, over 25,000 people and businesses in our region have registered their CCTV and doorbell cameras with West Midlands Police. That organisation, the organisation that maintains that registry, tells us that that is the largest CCTV database in the world. And that is available for West Midlands Police to access with the consent of those who own the CCTV in the event that there has been crime or disorder in that particular location. So it facilitates the ability to access that CCTV more rapidly and more effectively and more efficiently. Pleased to have expanded the Offending to Recovery programme across the West Midlands. That's now in Birmingham, Coventry, Dudley, Walsall and Wolverhampton. That is a programme that works with people who are engaged in acquisitive retail crime, prolific offenders who have entrenched drug addiction, particularly around cocaine and heroin, working with those people on the deceptively simple premise that if you can address the underlying causes of someone's offending, then that's a remarkably effective way of preventing and tackling crime. And more often than not, if you manage to do that, then they stop offending. So that's a project we've commenced back in 2018. It was rolled out in Birmingham in 2021, and now it's being rolled out across the West Midlands. That's important because we are told, it is estimated that 70% of shop theft is committed by individuals struggling with an addiction to heroin and crack cocaine. And I invest £100,000 a year into that project together with local authorities and others who are supporting that project. Comprehensive spending review. After a decade of underinvestment in policing and our wider criminal justice system, the comprehensive spending review was announced on the 11th of June. Undoubtedly, it provides a significantly challenging outcome for policing. It will place yet further pressure on our budget, particularly if we're to deliver on the government's neighbourhood policing guarantee, its missions to halve violence against women and girls, and youth violence and knife crime. Of course, I welcome the £12.2 million investment that we've already received, which enabled us to recruit those 150 additional neighbourhood officers, and further investment in the wider criminal justice system, including in counter-terrorism policing, our courts and our probation and prison services. But we will be considering the details of the comprehensive spending review. We'll be carefully reviewing our existing financial plans and awaiting the announcement of force level allocations, in connection with which we will not become aware until December 2025. My community fund, over the past 6 months, I've injected £330,000 of cash seized from criminals, helping to support about 50 or so organisations who are preventing crime, promoting community safety, and are pursuing the aims and objectives set out in my police and crime plan. And that's grassroots organisations across the West Midlands that we're able to fund. We're able to provide with grants of up to £5,000, and the impact that that delivers for those local grassroots organisations is always very impressive. In terms of child sexual abuse and exploitation, I welcome the announcement by the government of the National Crime Agency-led national operation and the statutory public inquiry into abhorrent, non-recent group-based child sexual abuse and exploitation, and both West Midlands Police and I will cooperate with and support the national operation and inquiry in any way that we can. And very happy to deal, you will see I've set out a very detailed statement in connection with that, which I, in the interest of time, will not run through in detail, but you can see I've covered that issue off quite comprehensively. Outstanding Citizens Awards, I'm on the lookout to champion the region's unsung heroes. I have an Outstanding Citizens Awards every year or so, and we are asking for nominations to that process. The deadline for nominations is Thursday, 7th of August, and the awards event will take place on Monday, the 6th of October, 2025. And those awards honour people in the West Midlands who've made exceptional contributions to our community through volunteering, acts of bravery, campaigning, dedication to their neighbourhood, or working tirelessly to improve safety. Natalie and I have also called on the government to tighten up the legal provisions around spiking, particularly within the new crime and policing bill. And we've written to the government about that. I'm really pleased to have recently met up with the Birmingham Central BIDS Crime Reduction Partnership and hear about some of the important work that's taking place there, particularly around preventing and tackling retail crime, shop thefts and violence against shop workers, because they are certainly top priorities for me. And that's why I've been investing in rebuilding community policing, bringing more offenders to justice, supporting the National Retail Action Plan, the Shop Kind campaign, and investing in prevention and rehabilitation. Investment for victims, I've split more than £100,000 between 7 organisations who are supporting victims and survivors of hidden and harmful crimes. So that includes, for example, honour-based abuse, female genital mutilation, modern slavery and human trafficking. And the details of those organisations are set out in my briefing. And finally, the new Dudley Police Headquarters. I'm pleased to be delivering on my pledge that will see Dudley Police's all-new headquarters open later this year. Dudley Police Station will be the second new police station to open in the West Midlands this year. Sutton Coldfields Police Station will relocate from its current site on Lichfield Road to a new station on Anchorage Road, around 300 metres away. In November last year, a new police base opened in Copthall House, Stourbridge, and another in the Canley area of Coventry this spring, which I referenced earlier in this presentation. And that creation of that new police station honours my commitment to open a new station in the town that was made when the old station closed. It'll also replace Brierley Hill Police Station, which currently serves as Dudley Police's headquarters. However, Brierley Hill will retain its own dedicated new police base within the local community for the local neighbourhood police teams. And I'm also delighted to announce that Brierley Hill neighbourhood teams will remain in Brierley Hill at a new permanent base at Cable Plaza near the waterfront, which I have also visited with the Chief Constable. And that new site is just half a mile away from the current police station, and it'll house 2 neighbourhood policing teams when the Brierley Hill police station is closed in autumn. And both the new Dudley Police HQ and the Brierley Hill Neighbourhood Team Police Base will be fit for the 21st century policing, and I'm committed to rebuilding community policing to prevent and tackle crime, to keep people, families, businesses and local communities safe and secure. I'm now going to pass over to my colleague Simon, who's just going to talk to you about Police and Crime Plan and the West Midlands Police performance.
Thank you very much, Simon. So I shan't take the panel through every single slide in the pack, but I did want to update the panel on the approach that we're taking to managing the delivery of the Police and Crime Plan, and just to give you a little bit of a flavour of some of the initial activity that we've been undertaking. So we've shifted the plan into a delivery plan, and that covers 356 individual commitments, with a named lead in the office for each of those. And we've implemented a quarterly assurance process whereby leads provide an update and a RAG rating for each of those commitments. So if they're red, then they come to the quarterly performance day, and the whole of SMT gives consideration to how we might be able to get those back on track and to be delivered. If they're amber, then the SMT member gives oversight of those, and if they're green, then it's for the lead with their line manager to take those forward. So at the most recent, the first of those assurance days, we had 9 reds and 92 ambers. We also have the key performance indicators that are in the plan aligned to each individual commitment where that's appropriate, and that allows us to further prioritise within those ambers to ensure that we're giving oversight to those things that absolutely require it. And of course, there's that golden thread then through from the police and crime plan down to local team business plans and into each individual's performance plan, say, or performance development review. And as you would imagine, much of the plan is already underway, but just wanted to talk you through a few things. So the first thing in that pack is New Chance. So that is our service for female offenders, and we're really pleased that we've just undertaken the procurement for that, and we'll have a refreshed service commencing in October, which will be an enlarged, expanded service. We've also got our arrest referral service, which is in the process of being recommissioned, and again that will be starting afresh in October. And we have really ensured that we've got lived experience both feeding into and influencing what the specification looks like, but also in delivering the service. So they will be ensuring that those that get referred from custody into treatment services actually make it through to those treatment services and commence that treatment programme. I shan't dwell on the Victims Code too much because I know Simon's talked about it already and Natalie will also be talking about it, so I'll skip all of those. We have also been doing plenty of work around crime and antisocial behaviour, so members may be aware of the Safer Streets Summer Initiative. So that's taking 28 town centres that have been identified as town centres by the Home Office and ensuring that we, across the police and local authority partners, have got an effective approach to driving down antisocial behaviour and crime and keeping those communities safe. I shall also skip the neighbourhood policing guarantee slides because we'll be coming back in September, so you'll hear all about that next time. So that's all I was going to say on those slides, and then I did want to just talk panel briefly through Aaron's performance appendix, which he had prepared. So again, I'll just pull out the highlights. So this is, as you would expect, broken down by the chapters in the police and crime plan, and everything that all the stats that I give you, they are comparing 24-25 financial year with the previous financial year, unless otherwise stated. So for rebuilding community policing, so the key things we look at here is around police officer and PCSO headcount. There hasn't actually been much change. So the previous uplifts and the uplifts that we're expecting, the additional 150, they kind of didn't happen in that period, so it's essentially stayed the same, so there's not much movement there. But of course, as Simon mentioned, we're excited to be have secured the additional 150, which we'll be getting over the coming months. The other KPI there that's worth pulling out for you is that recorded crime, total recorded crime across the West Midlands fell by 5.8%, which we're really pleased with, and that was reflected in all local policing areas. So preventing and tackling violence. So we saw significant reductions in violent crimes across serious youth violence, 12.6%, 5.4% for domestic abuse, 11.9% for violence against women and girls, and 3.5% for rape. We did, unfortunately, see an 18.6% increase for other sexual offences. Now, it's important for panel to understand that that is not just in West Midlands, that's something that's being seen elsewhere, and largely in relation to the Online Safety Act 2023, which came into effect in February 2024, and has added in crimes such as revenge porn and cyber flashing, which have significant numbers. Also pleased to highlight that positive outcomes for violent offences have improved by to 9.9%. So moving on to improving road and travel safety then. So road fatalities in that period remained static at 56, and then serious injuries rose slightly. Now, I know that panel members have probably seen that we've been doing some press recently on reductions to the number of people killed and seriously injured. So obviously there's been a lot of work, as Simon alluded to, and there's further things like investing in police speed vans, so on and so forth, that have really started to drive down those numbers. So between January and July 25, there was 471 people killed or seriously injured, whereas in the same period in 2024, there was 575, so that's an 18% reduction. So whilst the report says that it's kind of flatlining, actually we're starting to see the impact of all of that investment, and we hope that continues. So moving on to preventing and reducing neighbourhood crime. So we're pleased that that's reduced by 17.3% overall. So that varies from theft from person, which has decreased by 26.4%, to vehicle offences dropping by 13.9%. In that same period, business crime rose 8.4%, and that's primarily due, as I'm sure members will be aware, due to increases in shoplifting, which is a national trend, but also a local concern, of course. But we're really pleased that positive outcomes for shoplifting have improved to 22.8%, and that's nearly 9 percentage points up, so that's a real improvement over the last year. So panel members will have noticed that supporting victims and witnesses, the KPIs there are under development. So whilst supporting victims and witnesses has always been a priority for our office, and we invest significant amounts of money in services, and we absolutely hold the force to account around their delivery of support of working with victims, we haven't had key performance indicators. So there is a lot of work ongoing at the moment to both give us KPIs around the Victims Code compliance, to give us KPIs around victim satisfaction, and we're currently in the process of a tender exercise so as to secure a provider to support us with understanding what victim satisfaction looks like across the victim journey as it relates to their contact with police. And we're also looking to create a KPI in relation to the satisfaction with our commissioned services. So building trust and confidence, the force have been on something of a journey with their 101 and 999 calls, where perhaps previously there was issues getting through to 101, which led to more calls to the 999 number. We've now seen that reversed, so performance is up exactly where we want it to be, or almost exactly where we want it to be, with compliance with the 3-minute target for the 101 at 93%, such that calls have increased back up to that by 15%, and then the 999 calls have seen a reduction in 9.7% of the numbers of calls that they're getting through. And so they are answering within 3 seconds on average, those calls, which is absolutely what we want to see. And then similarly with compliance around the response, getting to those incidents in a timely manner, that has improved from 62.6% to 70.70% for the emergency response target, and then up to 66.8% for the 1 hour priority response target. An equal and fair West Midlands then. So again, similar to the first point I made in this section, because there hasn't been that much movement of officers, we haven't seen that much. There's essentially stayed the same for workforce diversity. But disproportionality in police powers is the other KPI, and that has also stayed relatively flat. That's something that we're really looking to understand. So we've got a trust and confidence survey that is being developed and tendered out, and we're looking for that to help us further understand what might be going on there, and equally continue to work with communities and universities, so on and so forth, to really understand what's going on there. And the other key part of that understanding as well, which I absolutely should mention, is that we're currently in the process of recruiting an independent scrutiny oversight board, and they will oversee the local implementation of both the National Police Race Action Plan, but also our local race action plan, and they will be developing their own set of KPIs around that we will then report on against the police and crime plan. So for bringing offenders to justice, the key KPI here is around the positive outcome rate. That's risen to 12.5%, which is up 4.4 percentage points, and really pleased to say that actually that's now 16% in the most recent month, so that's really strong improvement being seen there. The other key one is the crime data integrity, so that's currently in the 90% for the variety of categories that are listed there. and that's stable performance. And in terms of the Crown Court case progression from charge to completion, that's falling, so that's now 148 days where it was 232. Still want to see that go down, but there's positive progress being made in the West Midlands, certainly. And then finally, the final section is prevention and rehabilitation. So we're seeing a really large increase in preventative activity over the last year. So that's from drug treatment referrals going up by 14.2%, use of out-of-court resolutions increasing by 39.9%, and orders of civil interventions up 27.1%. So, you know, the preventative approach that absolutely is spoken about throughout the police and crime plan is clearly reflected in the activity that's taken place. So that's all I will bring out. We've also got Chief Superintendent Richard North here with us to support us in answering any questions that the panel may have. And I think that's it, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Simon. Members, can I open this up to questions? Okay, Councillor Murray, would you like to go first?
Thank you very much, Commissioner and Simon Doon, for your very comprehensive report. You are doing quite a lot, but we need to do still more. Now, I welcome you opening new police station, but in the past, quite a few police stations has been closed, especially in Darlaston and Willenhall, which we did protest against. And now neighbourhood policing, which are very vital and important to protect the community and the shopkeepers and from the antisocial behaviour and fly tipping. You just mentioned in your statement, Home Office had actually approval for more police officers, but when that is going to be implemented, because we need more neighbourhood police officers in every ward or in every area. That was one. And second thing, you have not mentioned nothing about the scooters, because scooters are causing more accident on the road, and also the cameras on the traffic light, because some people, we need more camera on the traffic light, because people when stop on the red light and other people drive right to us on the day and go through the red light. And that is the other point. And we need more policing in every area. And can you please just, and yes, and the last one, rehabilitation centers. Can you at least highlight on that one, when you are going to approve and when they are going to be open in every ward? Thank you.
Commissioner, just before you answer that question, if I may add to that, I think what Councillor Memmi is referring to, so in your report, you mentioned the 4.2 million additional funding for the additional 150 officers. And I think we're also putting another, you're redeploying another 139 officers into neighbourhood policing. I think for the benefit of the panel, it would be good to know when that redeployment and when those additional officers will be going into neighbourhood policing. And if you can be more specific in which areas, that would help.
Okay, thank you for the question. I didn't quite catch the final part of your question. Something about centres? Rehabilitation centres. Okay. Right.
Councillor Memmi, can you please, can I just remind speakers, when you are speaking, please use your mics. Please.
Right. Okay, well, I'll deal with those in turn. There's 4 separate points. I'll try and deal with them as succinctly as possible. In terms of the commitment around, and indeed your point around neighbourhood policing, Chair, as well. So, look, when the government announced its provisional funding settlement back on the 17th of December, there was an amount of £100 million allocated to the first tranche of the neighbourhood policing guarantee. You may recall there was a commitment in the current government's manifesto around the 13,000 additional officers. So normally when a provisional funding grant settlement is announced in December, in my experience anyway, it's more often than not rubber stamped when it's when the main police grant announcement is provided at the end of January. However, on this occasion, that 100 million was doubled in terms of the investment towards that neighbourhood policing guarantee first tranche investment for 25-26. So that £100 million investment went up to £200 million. What did that mean for the West Midlands? It meant that the amount we had available to invest in neighbourhood policing went up from 6.1 million to 12.2 million. So as a consequence of that, the Chief Constable and I bid in to the Home Office for 150 additional officers, with the intention that those officers will be allocated into neighbourhood policing. They will become dedicated neighbourhood police officers. And then, as I say, there was also, as part of that plan, to redeploy the 139 existing officers into neighbourhood policing and also recruit 20 PCSOs. So we put that bid in. That was approved and signed off in March, and that process of recruitment is taking place now. Okay, that is actively taking place. But in the meantime, what is also happening is, and you will see the process that's taking place if you wish to go onto the Single Online Home West Midlands Police website and put in your own local postcode for the area you represent, you will see that in connection with each of those neighbourhood policing teams, that each of those neighbourhood policing teams will now have an inspector, they will have a dedicated neighbourhood sergeant, and they will have dedicated, at least one dedicated neighbourhood officer, and a local action team and PCSOs as well. And you can go on to the Single Online Home West Midlands Police website, put in the relevant postcode and check out the numbers and the allocations for that neighbourhood policing teams, for that neighbourhood policing guarantee. Okay, and you will see that there are the dedicated neighbourhood officers that have already been allocated, and they will be, certainly by about mid-September, they will be named and contactable dedicated neighbourhood police officers. And as I say, they will have within that as well a dedicated local action team that is there to support them. So by all means, go and check that out. That commitment to rebuilding neighbourhood policing is a national commitment. It's a regional commitment in my police and crime plan. If you have a look at my police and crime plan, you'll see chapter 1 is all about neighbourhood policing, and it also sets out my own neighbourhood policing guarantee as well. So in addition to them being named contactable officers, they will have local priorities. Those priorities will be selected in consultation with local communities. There's also a College of Policing dedicated career pathway being rolled out across the country at the moment in order to professionalise neighbourhood policing. West Midlands Police are also introducing a dedicated app in order to be able to better measure any abstractions that take place from neighbourhood policing teams, so that those local policing areas can be better held to account around those issues, so as to make sure that as far as possible they remain dedicated neighbourhood officers. And there's also going to be a dashboard in order to be able to better capture and monitor the wide-ranging contributions that neighbourhood policing makes. So you can see that there's a lot of work going on around neighbourhood policing. That will be developing in the months to come. We have a dedicated agenda item for that in September, so we can probably talk to you about that in a little more detail and also provide you with the developments that will have taken place in the next couple of months. E-scooters, absolutely commitment to e-scooters. So I was out in Birmingham city centre. There's a dedicated policing operation, Op Frizzlin, which is all about cracking down on e-scooters and e-bikes in particular. So there's a lot of work been taking place around that. I'm very well aware of the crime and antisocial behaviour that can be associated with the use of e-scooters and e-bikes, and so there is absolutely a commitment to making sure that we hold those individuals to account who are utilising those vehicles in careless, dangerous and reckless ways, and sometimes causing harassment, intimidation and alarm to local people. I mean, as well as that, I'm supportive of the provision within the Crime and Policing Bill in order to foreshorten the period of time within which those vehicles can be disposed of, can be crushed once they've been seized as well. At the moment, it's about 14 days. I'm supportive of that being reduced to 7 days. So that's the government's out to consultation on that at the moment. And those siege, and there's also work going on in connection with regulating those e-bikes, because if they don't comply with the relevant regulations, that means they're often requiring insurance. For example, if they don't have insurance, they can be seized immediately. So there's a lot of work taking place around all of that. Red lights, well, look, yes, I'm absolutely supportive of local authorities investing in red light technology at junctions, so that we can better prevent and tackle people who think red lights are discretionary as opposed to mandatory. And by all means, check out my police and crime plan. You will see that preventing and tackling crime and antisocial behaviour on our roads, and I repeat, reducing the number of people who are tragically and avoidably killed and seriously injured on our roads is an absolute top priority. A lot of work taking place around improving road safety. I could talk to you for many an hour on that particular subject. If people want further details about all of the work that's taking place around that, we can deal with that. And then finally, the rehabilitation centres. I wasn't quite sure. I mean, I think you were talking about New Chance, but Simon...
Yeah, I think you were referring to the arrest referral service and New Chance. So both of those services are already in delivery, but we've just gone through a recommissioning process, so enhanced services will be in place from October.
Commissioner, if I can just come back to you on those additional officers. I mean, realistically, when do you think that, you know, on the streets and neighbourhoods will we really see that in effect? I think the concern here is from, as Councillor Memmi has put, and probably many more residents in West Midlands, let me rephrase that, is that we're not actually seeing that impact on those extra officers. I appreciate you're saying you can go on the app and you can look at your team. However, if you speak to those frontline officers, they still feel that those teams are quite depleted. So, as you said, that funding was agreed back in March. Here we are in the end of July. I know it's coming back to this committee in September, but I think as a reassurance, it would be good to know which almost these 300 officers will actually be situated in those neighbourhood units.
So that recruitment process is taking place at the moment. It has been taking place since we had final approval and sign-off from the Home Secretary. You'll appreciate there's a measure of time and a process involved in recruiting new police officers. You can't just simply magic them up. They have to go through a process, there's a training and all the rest of it. So all of that is taking place. In addition to that, since I think the 2nd of June, the project around the dedicated neighbourhood officers has also been in process. Since then, the dedicated neighbourhood officers and the local action teams have been allocated to those local neighbourhood policing teams. That has also been taking place over the last 1 to 2 months. I would expect, once we're over the period of summer demand, that by mid-September, people will begin to see those new local neighbourhood teams, with the benefit of those dedicated neighbourhood officers beginning to make an impact and deliver in their local communities. And certainly, I know it was the policing minister's aspiration that certainly before the end of this financial year, people would definitely begin to see a difference and a more impactful, accessible, reassuring and visible presence in local communities across the West Midlands. I don't know if there's anything that Chief Superintendent Richard North would want to add to that from an operational policing perspective.
I suppose it's just on an operational level, the complexity which the Commissioner referred to in terms of the recruitment, but it's also the retention and the rate which of natural wastage in the force in terms of retirements and officers and moving on and those sort of issues, that actually on a practical level makes it hard to directly answer your question when exactly will those numbers of officers come in. As the Commissioner said, that additional funding is secured and that feeds through to that recruitment process, and I suppose it'll be for the panel to monitor that progress in terms of that totality of the number of resources that are within West Midlands Police and sort of monitor progress against that. It's doubly complicated in that we will prioritise filling those dedicated neighbourhood officer roles that the Commissioner has referred to, and that may mean there's more probationary officers on response, for example. So, you know, it's a complex sort of picture in terms of the resourcing across different departments, different parts of the force, different pressures in different areas as we progress. So it is, in fairness, it's not a straightforward answer, but I think in future panels, it's something that you can monitor that progress. What I would say, compared to other forces, we've got a good track record actually of recruiting officers, getting them through our own training facility at Tally Ho. And even though, you know, traditionally a police probationary period is 2 years, we're very effective at making sure that they do contribute during that period directly. And when they're still in their probationary period, there'll be an independent patrol status where they can act, they'll be inexperienced, but they'll be able to, at an operational level, act independently and start contributing to the community. And it's one of those problems that over time will definitely improve, because officers will definitely get more experienced and more effective as they go forward.
If I may, Chief Superintendent, so are you telling the committee that you're quite satisfied with the recruitment currently? We're having plenty of interest in filling those additional roles and obviously the roles that are coming to an end.
Yeah, my understanding is, compared nationally to other forces, we've got a good track record actually of when the Home Office allocate additional funding opportunities, we've got a good track record of filling those posts. And I think sometimes we've been allocated other posts that other forces haven't been able to fulfil, which is great for West Midlands Police. But I think it's a function, we have got an effective recruitment campaign. There's obviously still more work to do to make West Midlands Police reflect the communities that it polices in terms of the diversity question. But that work continues. But yeah, we have got a good track record of recruitment. But the key thing is also retention as well, retaining staff, not just during their probationary period actually, but across the whole organisation through the whole of their career. And relative to other forces, my understanding, we are in a good position around that.
I'm sorry, panel members, you touched upon this on retention, and maybe the Commissioner may want to take this, or the Chief Superintendent. How in retention? Because previously, when we look at other similar forces, we were quite high in not holding onto our police officers previously. I believe that figure was quite high in the 40%. Is it still quite high when we look at other similar forces in retention of staff?
So I'll let the Commissioner come in as well. So there's the retention around the staff that we recruit during that probationary period is one figure. Then there's the wider piece that can be affected in terms of the flow through, you know, the generations actually of policing, in terms of you get bulges of people coming up to retirement that can affect that figure. But you know, a key performance figure for us, and I haven't got the figures in front of me, but is retaining staff that we recruit. Obviously, we want to make that initial investment in training, retain those staff for the long term through the police service. That's a slightly different performance indicator perhaps to having 30 years ago, there was a large recruitment drive and those officers are coming up to retirement, and for no particularly negative reasons, they're leaving the organisation in a bulge, for want of a better word. So it's a complex number again, you know, it just shows the complexity of that performance area.
Sorry, Commissioner, did you want to, my question was related to new recruits, not retiring.
Yeah, well, the Chief Superintendent has largely answered that point, but yes, I mean, it is important to understand there's different ways of measuring retention. I won't repeat what the Chief Superintendent said, but absolutely, I mean, by all means share any data that you have in mind, but my recollection anyway is that as far as retention of newly recruited officers, I don't think West Midlands Police is any different, broadly speaking, to most other forces, is my recollection of that particular matter. But the other matter I just wanted to say as well is that there are forces across the country that have not necessarily bid in for or taken up their potential allocation under the neighbourhood policing guarantee. And we have very consciously and decidedly left the door open with the Home Office and made it very clear to them that if there's any opportunities, as we have done on previous occasions, particularly under the previous government's policing recruitment process, if there is any slack in the system, we are up for recruiting additional officers and for recruiting those that have not been recruited in other police force areas if the Home Office wants to give us the opportunity to bid in for those additional officers. And we will be keen to take up that opportunity if it arises.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got just a few points and some questions, please. I'm really interested in these figures that we're hearing about this afternoon in terms of recruitment. Because just as colleague has said here, you know, there is natural wastage throughout the police force. And so I really do question how real these figures are with regards to recruitment. The door will always be revolving. That's my first point. Secondly, I wanted to clarify the issue with regards to the West Midlands retaining the enforcement fines. And when we are able to retain those fines, how will that money be distributed back? 20 new PCSOs, in reality, is that enough? And also, I think for the moment, my last question will be with regards to recording of crime. So I've got written here, there's been a 5% drop in the recording of crime. I'm a very tactile counsellor in Greets Green and Ling in Sandwell, and I know that there are so many people that are not reporting crime. So I'm just wondering, you know, what could be said with regards to that. Thank you.
So recruitment, we have touched upon that in our response to the previous question. Yes, I mean, plainly, in any organisation, there will always be a dynamic between those people who are leaving that organisation, either through retirement or through for other reasons, and recruitment. There's a natural dynamic that will exist in all organisations around all of that. I mean, if you have a particular concern or a particular question arising from that, then we'd be very happy to pick that up and provide you with any data that might be of assistance to you. If you want to follow up with a particular question around all of that, we'd be very keen to provide you with that information. In terms of retention of fines, as I mentioned, if we were able to retain in the West Midlands all road safety related fixed penalty fine revenue, that would be worth about £2.3 million. My intention for that would be that it would be reinvested into road safety initiatives to reduce the number of people who are killed and seriously injured on our roads. That could be in a variety of different ways. It could be investment into average speed enforcement cameras. It could be investment into better driver awareness and education courses. It could be investment into infrastructure to improve our roads system in order to better regulate speed on our roads, for example. So there's a whole variety of different ways that could be reinvested. But the main point here is, my view is, it could be better invested in the West Midlands into road safety initiatives than it could be being sent to central government. And I repeat that I've been campaigning around this issue for I think about 3 years or so. But we're just in the middle of finalising a letter because we're seeking to garner as much support across the country for this particular matter. And we've just recently circulated a letter across different regions around the country asking for their support for this particular campaign that I started as well. And I've had regular ongoing correspondence with the Department for Transport around this issue. I will continue to campaign around this matter because I do think, I repeat, we could invest that money far better, more effectively and more efficiently into road safety than it could be utilised by being sent off to central government. 20 PCSOs, is that enough? No, of course it's not. Is 150 officers enough? No, of course it's not. I repeat, we are a force that has about 700 fewer police officers than we had back in 2010. We have about 500 fewer PCSOs than we had back in 2010. But ultimately, this comes down to central government funding. And at the moment, we're recruiting 20 PCSOs and 150 additional police officers because that's all that central government funding will enable us to do at the moment. But I continue again with my campaign seeking not only return of those 700 officers, Because do bear in mind, there are many areas of the country that now have more police officers than they've ever had in their force history. People might be forgiven for thinking that there's some degree of fairness and equity around the allocation of police resources across the country. Well, all police forces are equal, but some are more equal than others. And the West Midlands Police is disproportionately disadvantaged when it comes to the allocation of police officers and when it comes to the national funding formula as well, because we lose out in the sum of about £40 million a year. And I'll give you an example of some police forces that now have more police officers than they've ever had in their force history. Norfolk, Suffolk, Kent, Surrey, Sussex, Cambridgeshire, Northamptonshire, Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, Warwickshire, Northamptonshire. With all due respect to those areas, they do not carry the same level of threat, risk, demand and need and vulnerability as we do in the West Midlands. And I will continue to campaign to right that wrong, because it's inexcusable, it's unacceptable, and I repeat, I will continue to campaign for justice and fair funding for West Midlands Police and for the people of the West Midlands. And just dealing with the recording crime point, Councillor, I mean, what I would say to that is there's never been a better time to report crime to West Midlands Police at the moment. The average time for the phone to be answered if someone reports a 999 is 3 seconds. The average time now for somebody who reports a 101 for the phone to be answered is about 30 seconds. West Midlands Police have one of the best 999 and 101 services in the country. And indeed, West Midlands Police answer 101 calls sometimes quicker than some forces answer 999 calls. And in addition to that, there's also other options around single online home. West Midlands Police are now part of that, so far more crimes can be reported online. There's also live chat. So there's a whole variety of different ways, and of course there's also Crime Stoppers as well if you want to report anonymously. So what I would say is there's never been a better time for people to report crime, and I would encourage people to do so. Thank you.
Do you want to come back, Councillor?
Just to say thank you very much to Simon Foster for that. Thank you.
And can I just add, Chair, just to say that the other thing to say is that victim support services are accessible to those that have reported to the police and those that haven't. So we make sure that all victims of crime needs are met.
Yeah, and I do invest about £6.7 million into victim support services across the West Midlands, so that victims are able to access their rights, and their welfare is always at the very forefront of policing and the wider criminal justice system as well.
Thank you. Councillor Holt.
Can I ask a question about the shoplifting issues and the drug-related pressure, well, the way in which the drug-related use seems to drive this type of activity? You mentioned a £100,000 contribution that you make towards the O2R system. Could you explain what the budget for that is overall, and what sort of improvements you would like to see to that system? Because it does seem to me very interesting that there's a very significant return on investment, so to speak, with regard to getting people away from committing shoplifting offences, but curing or tackling their drug-related dependency.
Is that on? Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's a remarkably effective project. I mean, that's why, we started it off, before I was Police and Crime Commissioner in 2018 in Birmingham on Erdington High Street, actually. It was actually a police officer called Stuart Toogood, whose inspiration it was. And it was on Erdington High Street for 3 years or so. It was academically evaluated. Off the back of that, I expanded it out in July 2021 across Birmingham and invested further money into the process. We've also had, for example, on occasion, we've had businesses invest in it. We've had probation invest in it in the past. And Off the back of that, we've now rolled it out across the West Midlands. So yes, we've got it in Birmingham, we've got it in Coventry, Dudley, Wolverhampton and Walsall. So it's absolutely a key part of dealing with that strategy around preventing and tackling shop theft and violence against shop workers and retail crime. As I said in my opening, it's built on that deceptively simple premise that if you remove the underlying cause of someone who's offending, they're very likely to stop offending. I mean, my investment around that is £100,000 a year, but we do have investment from the local authorities as well, who are investing in terms of harm prevention and treatment as part of their local budgets. So we have kind of leveraged that local authority investment into that project as well, which reflects the wider rollout across those local authorities. I don't know if you have those numbers around that wider investment from the local authorities, do you, Simon?
I don't, I'm afraid, but that's something that I'm sure we could provide as a follow-up to the panel.
Councillor Holt, do you want to come back to it?
Thank you, Chair. My question, sorry.
Just to follow up, thank you. Yeah, I think it's very important really to know what the budget for this should be, really, because clearly it could have a significant impact, and I'm sure the police and prosecution authorities, if they saw a reduction because of this, I wonder whether it's also a link to health, really, in terms of how that's dealt with, and whether there's a joined-up approach sufficiently to square the circle.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is something that we've been looking at in the past, isn't it? As well as also potentially leveraging funding from retailers, because, of course, there is an advantage to them if a project like this can contribute to preventing and tackling retail crime and shop theft and violence against shop workers. And we have had investment from retailers in the past, haven't we? I mean, in particular, the Co-op have invested in it, and who else have we had invested?
I think it's two different iterations of the Co-op, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. So we have had retailers, and we have, well, for example, on 2 occasions over the past 3 months or so, we've convened a retailers roundtable at Lloyd House. And on the last occasion, which was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think we had about 25 different high street national retailers who attended that, and we gathered them all together at Lloyd House. We talked to them about a whole variety of different issues in terms of the investigation work that's taking place, in terms of how they can better report in, and whole variety of issues, but we did also take the opportunity to give them a detailed presentation on the offending to recovery scheme as well, and also with a view to trying to encourage them to see that there are benefits for them potentially in investing in that scheme. So we'd be very keen to attract investment from retailers as well, because undoubtedly there is a significant benefit potentially for them to be from that project.
Okay, Councillor Singh, then I'll Councillor Henley, then we'll go to Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just refer to... Hello? Thank you, Chair. I'll just refer to the commitment of prevention and rehabilitation, bullet point 2. I very much welcome that more and more people will be treated. That's good. Like those people who can be treated, they may live their like a normal life. The problem we had in the past is nothing new. I'm talking about last 14, 15 years. We had these supply centres in Wolverhampton. A good many people do not want to go there simply because they do not want to be seen going in there. They're hiding their own drugs. So that's something alternative we got, because look, we need to treat them as well. Simply reason they're hiding. They don't. If they walk in nearby, walk in and walk out, somebody see them and say, well, I'm going to be seen. They think I'm on the drugs. That's one thing. That's been happening for a long time. It's not a fault of the supply centres. And second is, some of that money, okay, we need to treat more and more people, okay. Can we spend some of the money on the prevention and reduce the supply and use of drugs so we have less people to treat?
I suppose one of the key benefits of the Offending to Recovery project is that it does involve a significant amount of outreach work. So the Offending to Recovery doesn't depend on those people with entrenched addiction to heroin and crack cocaine coming to any central venue. The team go out proactively and engage in outreach work. And importantly, that team is made up of police officers and trained drug workers as well. So we work particularly in partnership with CGL, Change, Grow, Live. And that combination, I think, is quite effective, because you have the policing aspect to it, you have the trained drug workers aspect to it, but you also have that outreach work as well. So, as I say, I think that's proven to be quite an effective formula. And then I think your second point was about... Sorry.
If you were to use a bit, some of that money, not all of it, on to reduce the supply and use of drugs, so we'll have less people to treat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, projects like offending to recovery plainly have to run in tandem with robust disruption and enforcement to deal with those individuals who are intent on causing harm to others as a consequence of their engaging in the illegal drug trade. Absolutely, you need that in combination with projects like offending to recovery. And so, for example, West Midlands Police join in the National County Lines Intensification Week at least twice a year, and there were very significant there was very significant impact from the County Lines Intensification Week in terms of weapons recovered, in terms of drugs recovered, in terms of individuals arrested and ultimately prosecuted, and in terms of individuals safeguarded as well.
Councillor Henley.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions that probably jump about a bit. The figures, we've got a lot of percentages within the reports. I'd like to see, personally, the actual figures themselves as well. A percentage could be managed into whatever you want it to look like, a low percentage. 1% could end up being 10,000, or it could be 10. It'd be nice to see the figures and what it corresponds to. Operation Snap, use it personally myself. It's a good item. It's the first time I knew you could use your mobile phone with it as well. Perhaps communication needs putting out there more, that can be done as well, and not just dash cam. Is that app as well? Can it be expanded for reporting drug dealing, stuff like that? Because it's a good app. Can it be expanded into that type of field? If there's a lot of people using it, can it go down that line? The reporting side, as fellow councillor Taylor has also said about the confidence in residents reporting crime. There's a lack of confidence out there. I think a lot of fellow councillors here will agree. They don't report things because they don't get no feedback. So they're like, why should I report it? Yeah, it's gone as evidence, it's gone as wherever, but there's no feedback to say, yeah, we're following up on it, or this has happened, or this is not happening. There needs more communication on all sides to get that feedback. Your figures are coming down of crime, but that's just fake news, really, because no one's reporting nothing. So you've not got the true crime stats there. RTCs, I'm pleased you're doing something with the average speed cameras. Why is it only average speed cameras? Because the road has got to be a certain length to actually put an average speed camera down. A lot of speeding's on other roads which aren't long enough to have an average speed camera. Who's funding them? Who's going to maintain them? Where's the cost coming from? Is it joint work with councils? Is it the police side of it? And where's the money go from fines? That's mainly it, I'll say, because the road safety side, big issue with my former firefighter, so I see the aftermath. And I think more needs doing, more communication needs doing with all partners really out there. And there needs more proactive stuff being seen by residents. I'm sure everyone agree, every area has got speeding, but it's hard to get police out there because of the low numbers. It's hard to get the neighbourhood team out there all the time because their workload's full and them covering a large area. Just more needs doing, and what are the plans for the future?
Commissioner, just before you answer Councillor Henley's question, just on enforcement, in your report that you quoted 4,203 additional road safety enforcement as took place between 24 and 25, which is a welcome. That was an increase of 20%. But obviously that isn't broken down into what sort of enforcement that was. On the fatalities, it's 56, there was no change. I appreciate that one more would, it's not good in anybody's interest, but one death on any roads, it is one fatality far too much. And we know that you obviously increased the speeding vans in the last 12 months. I think that's what you're referring to. But we don't know, and maybe this may be an operational matter for Chief Superintendent North, of how obviously those additional speed vans now are allocated and to which areas that they are put out. And just from the dashcam footage, it was 2,500 additional reports, you said, but there was only a 4% prosecution on those. I may have read that wrong, so apologies. I thought you said 4% prosecution on that from the dashcam footage that was sent. But just come back to figures. I think it would help with figures, especially for our next meeting, because the Chief Constable has gladly given us some figures over the last few days. He said that overall there's been 20,000 less offences from July 24 to July 25. He's broken some of it down, but additionally, there's been 58,000 additional arrests, which is 9.2% increase. I mean, that would think from a resource issue, that's a lot more arrests. So yes, it's great if crime's coming out, but then we're arresting more people. Are we saying then we're not charging those additional 58,000 arrests? And these are figures that the Chief Constable has quoted in the last 2 days in the Birmingham Mail. It's quite out there in the public domain. And I think for the September meeting, it would be good if we could actually have those breakdown, because he's also quoted knife crimes down 18%. But we also know, and we welcome the measures that you're doing with your knife bins, but we know knife crime is very prevalent. It's a danger to our community. More needs to be done. So those are some of the figures that may assist going forward. I appreciate you're not going to be able to answer all them today, but I think if for our September meeting, if we could have a breakdown on those, that would be very, very helpful.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the question. I mean, what I would say on specifics, if you have any express particular questions, then please put them to us in writing so that we can respond to them, because it's very difficult to kind of pick them up verbally during the course of a meeting like this. So I would urge you to put those questions in writing so that we can respond to them in detail and we can understand exactly what it is that you're asking, so that we can give you exactly, as far as possible, the answer that you're looking for. If that's okay, I'd really appreciate that.
Absolutely. I mean, some of this has come from your report.
Having said that, that's what needs to happen in terms of any follow-up arising out of any issues that you want responses about today. That's just the first point. Now, in terms of addressing as many of those issues immediately, very happy to do that. I counted about 12 different issues that were mentioned during the course of those two contributions. So quite challenging to deal with each and every one of those in as much detail as I wish, and it's always possible I might miss any. But look, I'm very keen to respond to them immediately. Okay, so first off, KSIs. So the most recent data around KSIs, and I made this announcement at my Accountability and Governance Board, as well as the most recent numbers in terms of enforcement. I made that announcement as recently as last Tuesday, and indeed it was the subject of some coverage in the media as well. So, I mean, as indeed Simon mentioned in his presentation, we've seen an 18% reduction in the number of people killed and seriously injured on the roads in the West Midlands. So in January to July 24, there were 575 people killed and seriously injured. For that same period in 2025, January to July, we've seen a reduction to 471. That's an 18% reduction. Now, I repeat, one person killed or seriously injured on our roads in the West Midlands is one too many, but that is illustrative of some progress in terms of the investment that's taking place around improving road safety. That is in part as a consequence of all of the work that is taking place around that investment around roads policing. So in terms of investment numbers, and again, if you have any if you want any further information around this, very happy to provide it with you. But in broad terms, enforcement in the West Mids has increased from about 1,800 enforcements a week up to about 5,000 now, and there's an intention to increase that to 7,000 by next April. My understanding is that those numbers represent enforcement in relation to excess speed. Okay, but I'd be very happy to, if you want to follow up with a particular question about that, I'd be very happy to firm up on the exact breakdown of those numbers. But either way, as you can see, there's been a very significant increase in enforcement. So how has that happened? Well, it's happened because there's been a very significant increase in investment in roads policing in the West Midlands, and that includes the road crimes team, it includes the road harm prevention team, the 24/7 interceptor team, the camera enforcement team, the commercial vehicle unit, and also the central ticket office as well. So significant additional resources have gone into that, and that has meant increased enforcement around, in particular, the fatal four. So that's excess speed, it's drink and drug driving, it's people using digital devices when on the roads driving, and also not wearing safety belts as well. So a lot of investment that's gone in connection with that. In addition, we have the West Midlands Road Safety Strategic Plan 2023, the West Midlands Road Safety Action Plan 2024, My Police and Crime Plan. All of that is driving that strategic work across the West Midlands. I've invested to double the number of mobile speed camera vans in the West Midlands. I've also transformed OpSnap as well, because I secured investment to have 6 dedicated officers, and I've secured another £165,000 of invested into OpSnap this year in 25-26 to increase those dedicated officers from 6 to 9 as well, and that is what has driven the transformation of the use of OpSnap in the West Midlands. I also purchased 16 handheld speed devices as well that have been allocated across the West Midlands local policing areas for use on community speed watch, but also by officers for enforcement as well. And in addition to that, we've also, as I say, finalised that joint working agreement around average speed enforcement for the reasons that I outlined earlier, which I won't repeat. We've also been cracking down on street racing, of course, because we have a network of civil injunctions in the West Midlands. We have also pursued significant education and awareness and disruption and diversion and serious criminal prosecution as well for street racing. So last year, there were 3 individuals who'd been organising street racing in the West Midlands who collectively had imposed on them immediate custodial sentences amounting to 10 years between the 3 of them for organising street racing in the West Midlands, and that sent out a very strong message. And indeed, in recent times, we've seen about 50% reduction in calls for service around street racing in the West Midlands, in Birmingham rather, and in the Black Country about 38% reduction in calls for service around street racing as well. But of course, constant and unremitting action is required to deal with that particular matter. And I repeat, I'm continuing with my campaign to retain road safety related revenue in the West Midlands, and I'm also campaigning around graduated licences and immediate roadside bans, and also reductions in drink driving limits as well. So there's a lot of work taking place around road safety. In addition to all of that, neighbourhood communication. Absolutely agree to you. Communication is always key in so many different aspects of life, of course, and indeed that is, in part at least, the rationale behind rebuilding community policing and the implementation of the dedicated neighbourhood officers. That is about improving communication, because those local neighbourhood teams, I would expect, to be delivering on priorities that they have worked on in consultation with local communities. Feedback is absolutely key as well. Interesting thought about the use of something similar to Next Base for the purpose of reporting drug activity. That's the first time I've ever heard anyone propose that. Be interested in perhaps pursuing the possibility or practicality of that. Don't know. OpSnap, thank you for your acknowledgement of the progress that's been made around that particular matter. In terms of your ask around the numbers concerning the percentages relating to the data, some of the data in that West Midlands Police Performance Report does include numbers and percentages, but not all of it. But again, Chair, if there are particular numbers that you want behind those percentages, please write to us and reference exactly what it is that you want, and we will endeavour to provide you with exactly the information that you're requesting. And I think, positive outcome rates, I think, was the other point that was made. I mean, we've seen significant increases in positive outcome rates. I mean, a couple of years ago or so, positive outcome rates in the West Mids were around about 5 or 6%. They're now, on average, up on most recent data, up to nearly 13%. So significant increase in positive outcome rates in the West Midlands. More people are being brought to justice as a consequence of that additional action around robust enforcement that's taking place in the West Midlands.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Henley?
Just come back, please, yeah. Speed cameras, quite aware that you've increased the numbers of them for the neighbourhood teams, which is great. But when the teams finish is when the cameras are needed. Well, say people are needed on the streets. A lot of the speeding in my area personally is at dark hours at night, and the neighbourhood team are finished. Policing's low on the numbers, so is there anything what can be done along them hours? Because I presume everyone's area of a night time, everyone comes out, and a lot of racing on the streets happens.
Well, the officers that work on the Op Hercules street racing activity are often out into the small hours of the evening and night. I mean, I've been out with them on 2 occasions. I know that a lot of their activity takes place into the late evening and early hours on occasions if it's required. So that does take place, particularly around street racing, for the reasons you've identified. That's another reason as well why I've doubled the number of mobile speed camera vans, because I understand that they are capable of operating out of daylight, out of what you might call normal daylight hours as well. And I think certainly overtime has been authorised to enable those individuals who operate those mobile speed camera vans to engage in some additional enforcement activity at times that you refer to in your question. So I think some of that is certainly taking place, absolutely. But you're right. I mean, it's important that, as far as possible, policing is responding to where the demand and the need leads it, isn't it? And the 24/7 interceptor team is always out and about, well, by definition, 24/7. And there is a significant uplift in that 24/7 interceptor team. So that 24/7 interceptor team, I think, has about 100 officers and about 10 sergeants within that 24/7 interceptor team. So, I mean, obviously they work shifts, but they are out and about across the West Midlands 24/7.
Thank you. I am looking at the time there. I think I'm going to take 2 more questions on this before we obviously move on to our victims advocate. Councillor Khan and then Councillor Bellingham.
Well, first of all, Commissioner, thank you very much for providing your report. As always, it's fairly comprehensive because so many couple of issues, and I appreciate it needs to be concise as well. Just quickly picking up on the introduction of these new mobile van units. It just so happens over the last weekend I came across one. I wasn't the driver, and we weren't speeding either. But I mean, I just say it because he was parked in a very silly place, double yellows, just as you would want to, not almost, there was a space at least 2 van lengths before you enter into a roundabout. And we couldn't carry on without crossing into the right-hand lane. I know they try to hide themselves, I appreciate that, but you've got to find a nice place. You know, usually they're well hidden and they're safely parked. So that's just an observation because you mentioned it. It was very, very new, so it must have been one of the ones that you recently introduced, and I think the public of West Midlands would be grateful that those have been introduced. A couple of points or questions that I want to raise, going back to the point about retention of fixed penalty road safety fines. Now, you've spoken a lot about that, I won't go over everything, but clearly you're doing your best. But the question I have on that aspect is that, is there anything we can do as councillors to try to help you in that? Can we write to an agency? Would you encourage that? Or potentially even start a petition of some kind to try to force some, shed some more light on that issue and force the government to take action sooner than that. You've referred in your report to your desire to increase the number of knife bins from 32 to 64. Obviously, that's very welcome. In Coventry, we're in the 3rd week now. We had a very large bin installed by the Home Office in partnership with some organisation called Word for Weapons. So I'm not sure, I don't think that's directly linked to you, but clearly it's a great initiative. Is it? Sorry. Oh, it's Home Office, but it's a win-win. We've got that, and any further kind of enlargement of that scheme as well. And the final point I was going to make is that you're very helpful in the way you set out the documents for us, but I'll probably speak on behalf of every member who's here today. We all represent different authorities in the West Midlands. And I think it would help us all, because we do go back and report to our colleagues and residents. They want information about, okay, great, Commissioner's introducing more police officers, more bins, etc. If we knew what Coventry, for instance, would get in new officers, how many new bins might come to Coventry, I know unless you have a plan already made, you might not be able to answer that at this time, or even in the short term, because until the officers are appointed, we won't know where they're deployed. But where you can, going forward, I think it would help us all if you're giving us information. If you could specify, particular cities and what they might get, accepting that might not be possible on all occasions, but it would help us a lot. And it'd probably save us asking a lot of questions as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Khan, just on that point, we will be writing to the Commissioner on that. I mean, the Commissioner has provided that information previously with the 7 METs on how many officers each authority has. You have previously broken that down.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can give a quick response to those points. Yeah, well, no, thank you for the feedback about the mobile speed camera van you came across. I mean, plainly, the routes that they select are routes that are selected on the basis of significant amount of data over a period of time, because plainly, as you would expect, we want to ensure that those mobile speed camera vans are in those areas where they're going to make the biggest impact, and they are potentially going to be in areas where they can prevent and tackle crime and antisocial behaviour on our roads and reduce the number of people who are killed or seriously injured. But yes, I mean, I would expect the mobile speed camera van operators to be carrying out a risk assessment in terms of where they choose to locate those vans. But anyway, in terms of road safety, well, I think there is, Councillor, and thank you very much in terms of assistance around the campaign to retain the road safety related revenue from fixed penalty fines. So, as I mentioned in my introduction, we are circulating a letter around a variety of different organisations and bodies at the moment and seeking their support and sign up. So I'd be very happy to share that letter with all, with the panel and indeed all members of the panel. And if there was any action that either as individuals or in your particular political groupings or within your own local authorities that you were able to do to continue to support that campaign, that would be immensely welcome, because I think the more voices we have from the West Midlands on that particular subject, the better. Now, we know, as has often been trotted out to me by the government, that they are working on a national road strategy at the moment. I believe that's going to be the first national road strategy for some time. Don't have a date for which that is likely to be available or published, but in any event, I want to keep the pressure on in terms of this campaign, and indeed if they are going to publish a strategy, it would be useful to ensure that perhaps that campaign was capable of being considered as part of that strategy. So yes, we will definitely arrange to circulate that to you, so thank you very much. Weapon surrender bins, yes, I mean the Home Office have cited a number of weapon surrender bins around the action they're taking to ban ninja swords as a result of the particular the national campaign that's been run by Pooja and Nikita Kanda, whose son Ronan was of course tragically murdered in Wolverhampton. And the Home Office are citing a number of those bins across the West Midlands. And of course, I'm expanding my own network of weapon surrender bins as well. And we did work with the Home Office quite closely. Our Violence Reduction Partnership worked in partnership with them in terms of identifying the most effective areas for those Home Office bins to be cited. And then in terms of the numbers across the local policing areas arising out of the neighbourhood policing guarantee, well, I'm pretty sure those numbers will be capable of being identified. Those dedicated neighbourhood officers are being or have been already allocated across the local neighbourhood teams. So I'm pretty sure it would be a relatively straightforward exercise in mental arithmetic to be able to calculate exactly how many have been allocated to particular local policing areas, I would have thought. So I'm sure if the panel wants to write to us about that, again, we can probably, I would anticipate, be able to locate those numbers and let people know how those numbers have divvied up between local policing areas.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Bellingham, I know you're patiently waiting. Would you like to ask your question? I do apologise. Okay, thank you. Commissioner, thank you for presenting your report. And this is, I think we've had a good... Councillor Murray, I'm going to move on this. You'll have opportunities on that. I think it's been a very good discussion on your report. So the panel notes the recent activity by the Police and Crime Commissioner. Thank you, that's noted. Okay, I will now move on to item 13, which is the Victims Advocate. And again, this is the report from the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Victim Advocate. Thank you.
Just going to put a presentation.
Oh, while we're just waiting for that, I'll just say good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for welcoming me here today. And I'll be taking you through really the role that I've taken up in the Police and Crime Commissioner as Victims Advocate. So what we're going to be starting off with will be looking about the importance of why I'm here. You know, of the fact that we've just spent the last hour and a half talking about crime and how we're going to tackle it. And at the end of the day, we're tackling it to prevent someone becoming a victim. Because nobody chooses to become a victim. It seems like an obvious statement. But as we build this slide up, we can see the fact that being a victim, though, does not mean that you are weak, that you are to blame. Victims are not born. They are made through the actions of a person or a circumstance. And victims need understanding and support and empathy. And most importantly, victims need empowerment, which actually just proved the point of Councillor Taylor about the fact that people need to feel empowered to report crime. And obviously mentioned by the gentleman over there, fellow councillor, saying victims need to feel they can report. So on top of nobody choosing to become a victim, nobody expects to be a victim. And this is where I'll share a very personal story. This is actually my story as to how I'm here and how I'd hopefully be able to bring some knowledge and experience into this role. So back in 2016, I was a senior member of a large pharmaceutical company, Roche, and I'd had a 16-year career within the pharmaceutical industry and had raised up in the ranks. I had 2 daughters. They were just 6 and 10 years of age. I was living in a very happy and settled relationship with my partner, who you see pictured there, planning our wedding, living in Sutton Coldfield, what's always seen as a relatively safe area, happy suburbia. I'd just turned 40, so I was knocking on the door of middle age. I hate to say it, I'm fully in middle age now, which is something I'm still coming to terms with. And I was 8 months pregnant. So on this picture, you think, well, all of those things would not tick to somebody becoming a victim of such a violent crime. Yet, on Friday the 4th of March 2016, the news hits. Across all our networks, we saw on BBC News, healthy baby born after a pregnant woman has been stabbed multiple times. Unfortunately, the title wasn't fully correct. A pregnant woman had been stabbed multiple times, myself, 24 times over a period of 9 minutes in broad daylight at just gone 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon in Sutton Coldfield town centre. Unfortunately, the baby at that time wasn't healthy. She was actually born with severe brain damage and was rushed to a different hospital. I was placed in an induced coma at Birmingham Queen Elizabeth Hospital, who were fantastic with my care. And I woke up the following day out of my coma to be told that my baby was fighting for her life in a different hospital. And I'm looking around for my loved ones, because we all think, well, we come out of a coma, surely our loved ones would be there. And I was surrounded by police officers. And it's that realisation, as a victim, you're now in the middle of a major criminal investigation. And as I was approached by a police officer, they came and talked to me and asked me what I'd remembered. Now, I've just come out of an induced coma. I'm taking on the information that my baby's fighting for her life. My head is spinning. And they break the news to me that the person that they arrested at the scene, the person they were holding and charging my attempted murder, was in fact my partner. The man who had left home that morning. The man who kissed me goodbye, the man I'd known for 25 years of my life. We were both at grammar school together in Birmingham. He was the year above me. Our friend circle had been the same. So somebody I'd trusted and had let into my life had now done the ultimate betrayal. And my head could not come to terms with it. I was trying to process the fact that somebody so close to me had done this to kill me, to try and kill me and my baby. And while I'm lying there trying to take all of this in, I suddenly realise that I'm thrown into the great washing machine of justice. And people laugh because it's like, well, why should she just put a picture of a washing machine up on a slide? Which is a very good point, to be fair. Why has she put a picture of a washing machine on a slide? But having experienced it, I always relate the criminal justice system to being like a washing machine. You're thrown in, somebody else shuts the door, and then they're pressing all the buttons. They're in control of the programme. You have no control. You're spun around so fast that you don't even know which way's up. You have a complete lack of control and a complete disorientation within the system. And at the end of it, you're pulled out and you're left there, proverbially dripping wet, wondering, well, what the heck has just happened? And then you go on to the fact that you're part of now a victim's journey. And the victim's journey, all alongside this criminal justice system, is a very lonely one, and victims can be left feeling guilty, isolated, lonely, shamed. There's certain crimes we know certainly that carry even more shame, especially crimes of a personal nature, things like my own with domestic abuse, things to do with stalking, things to do with spiking, where you can feel that it could have happened, well, because I knew that person, and they carry a stigma. And victims, quite crucially, can feel very scrutinised. Their culpability questioned. Well, what did they know? Why did they get involved in that relationship? What did they play as a part in all of this? I fought my way through my pathway. And the reason I raise about my timeline from victim to survivor to thriver is so you can see the different range of expertise that I'm bringing to this role. So in 2016, I was attempted domestic homicide victim, as we've stated. The following year, I sought restorative justice. I faced my ex-partner. I went to H&P Birmingham, and I spent a whole day opposite him. Why, you might ask? Why on earth would you do that? Because I wanted him to look me in the eye and for me to ask certain questions, just as we are here today, wanting clarification. I needed that clarification. The court trial, I felt, had not given me that. In 2018, I successfully challenged the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority. All victims of crime are eligible to apply for compensation, as we know. Unfortunately, my baby, who was a named victim of crime, so my ex had pleaded guilty to attempted murder of me and attempted child destruction of our baby. She was a named victim, but was refused compensation. She'd had extensive brain injury. She was unable to swallow. She was unable to do certain activities. It went on through her development. Her speech was significantly delayed. And I said, well, my daughter's gained significant injury, yet here you are refusing it. And they said, oh, we do not give compensation to babies who are in the womb. They are classed as not a person in their own right. They are part of the mother. They're part of, the initial victim. And I said, yes, but she's a named victim. And I took the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority on, and I won. And my daughter's the first baby in the UK to be able to recognise as a victim in her own right. And for any cynics amongst the group, not saying here, but obviously, that money is being held in trust in government and will be she'll only be eligible to receive that once she hits 18. And it'll be there for provision of any further support she needs going forwards. In 2019, I found my voice. I published a book and I set up a social enterprise, the knife crime epidemic, which, Councillor Khan, you recognised yourself, about the fact of the impact that it has on our communities. And being a victim of a stabbing, I used that knowledge and started working with young people. I then went through a journey, becoming an ambassador for various organisations around domestic abuse. I became qualified as a specialist working with gangs and youth violence. And in 2022, I was surprised to get a letter from the Cabinet Office to say that I'd been awarded an MBE for my services to young people and for the prevention of knife crime. In 2023, my work within prisons started to take off even further, which is quite an unusual juxtaposition from one where I'm talking about prevention of crime and the fact that I'm there very much as the victim voice to now suddenly working with offenders, which obviously we've talked about today about offender programmes. So very much using my journey for people to reflect on that victim journey. And I've worked now across 10 different prisons across the UK with some really fantastic feedback of people looking at what it looks like. What is that long-lasting impact? And I think as a victims advocate, it's very important to be able to bring in that insight of the offender's journey as well as the victims. And in 2024, last year, I became an active victims campaigner. We obviously have a lot of changes happening at a government level around the prisons. And Lord Timpson received many letters until he agreed to see me in person. So I am very persistent, I have to say. So then in 2025, this year, I officially became West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner's Victims Advocate. And a picture of myself and the Commissioner there outside Lloyd House. My aim is very clear. I will ensure that the voice of the victim is heard and that the police, alongside the Commissioner himself, that the police and other criminal justice agencies are held accountable. I'll be that critical friend. I'm going to ensure that all the services, whether that's the police, whether that's the CPS, whether it's the courts, whether it's probation, and even our support services are doing their absolute best for victims within our region, regardless of the crime, regardless of the victim's background. We've heard today about the Victims' Code, and I'm going to make sure that we uphold the Victims' Code and that every victim knows their rights and how they should receive those. We have here the Victims' Code, and I think it's really important. We'll just take a moment. You'll see there are 12 rights. Now, the Victims' Code has been around since 2006. 2006, 19 years. Yet, it'd been in play 10 years when I became a victim, and I can honestly say I had absolutely no idea about it. And I'd class myself as a fairly educated, well-read person. And this is the problem, is that we have a lot of people in our communities who, rightfully, maybe within this room, who do not know what it involves. It's been nicely put into 12 rights, starting right from being able to report. So again, taking Councillor Taylor's point, and sorry, I'm so bad with names, you haven't got your name up. Councillor Henley, right. Gosh, it's a good job I've got my contact lenses in, isn't it? but that they should be able to, and that's really important to me, that victims feel that they can access the justice system at that first point, that they can be understood, that they feel brave and empowered, and that they, can understand the process. They can have their details, their crime record, and it goes right the way through that the support services. It's all about information and communication. So all about this thing about the feedback, that people know what is happening, that they get information about the court journey, that they get information about the compensation, that they get the information right at the end there of your rights to review. The fact that if your rights are not being made, that you can also put in a complaint. We need people in all of our communities, in all of our area here in the West Midlands, to know this. Because the more that people are informed, the more they can take a positive journey to become a victim, to survivor, to thriver. And that's what we want to see throughout. So what have I been doing then in the last 90 days, or first 90 days of job? So I've been in since the beginning of April, so 3.5 months technically. And it's been really important for me to really get under the skin of our system. And I found that as a really key driver. So I have built relationships and developed an understanding awareness with our colleagues in West Midlands Police. I've met with all the senior police officials now. I've met with the chief and the deputy and the assistant chiefs. I've spent a day in all of our public protection units. So I've been spending a day like with our domestic abuse unit, our child unit, our rape and serious sexual assault unit. I've visited our custody blocks. It's almost like I've been literally going through the whole timeline of where victims and offenders go through so that we can understand all those touch points. I sat on one of our stalking triage meetings. We've got a great service here in the West Midlands where we have a real in-depth look into how we can tackle stalking and better support our victims of stalking. And I managed to sit in on one of those, again, to see that victim's journey there. And I've met with our road victims teams. I've also met with all of our commissioned services. As Commissioner's already alluded to, we spend millions of pounds per year on our commissioned services. So it's really important for me, as victims advocate, to make sure that all of those services are providing everybody in the room, all your constituents, that they're getting the service that they should be getting. So it's been group meetings, one-to-ones with the CEOs, and doing some in-person visits. On top of that, I've been meeting with our criminal justice partner agencies. I've got 2 meetings up in the neck in Diary. I've already met with one of them, with the head of the CPS, both on the magistrate side and on the Crown Court side. Meeting with the HMCTS, so our Courts and Tribunal Service, and HMPPS, obviously our prison and probation. I've met with other commissioners. I've been down to London. I have a good relationship with the London Victims Commissioner, and I've met with the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, and we have various interactions and dialogue. I've met with MPs, ministers. I've undertaken casework. And I do urge, if any of your constituents or anybody listening to this live stream, and they feel they wish to write in about something that's happened for them, do write into our office at the Office of the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner. I've met with a couple of victims in order to learn their journey who've wanted to share it. We had the Domestic Abuse Commissioner come up, and this is a really key part for us in the West Midlands. Let's get the West Midlands on the map on a national scale. Let's make sure that they know what our communities need. So we had Dame Nicole Jacobs come up. I'd met her and knew her already through my previous campaigning. And we had 2 roundtable meetings. And quite importantly in that, we had our specialist by and for services. So specialist by and for is by our specialist communities, and it's representing our specialist communities, and also about the fact that they have our specialist communities heading them up. So they really understand who they're doing. So things like Sikh Women's Aid, for example, or we have weights for our black and global majority victims. I've also led on an advisory panel for our victim code awareness, because part of our plans is very key. It's about making sure we get the victims code out there. Whilst that's just firing back up again, I've also been a chair on a number of meetings. We have our Victims Commission meeting, which I now formally chair, and I now formally chair the Victim and Witnesses Delivery Group, where we see our criminal justice partner agencies coming on board. The Victims Commission meeting, by the way, to set the scene, is all of our victim services. It's all the CEOs. I have regular meeting commitments, of which I've taken part already. I sit alongside Commissioner on the Accountability and Governance Board. If you ever watch these are on a monthly basis, and this is where we are able to pose questions directly to the Chief of West Midlands Police and the Deputy Chief. We analyse a number of papers that are publicly available for people to be able to read themselves and can see the type of questions that we're putting forward to the police directly to hold them to account. And I sit on our local criminal justice board. I've been an opening speaker at a number of events, including a Women's Justice Board, a Spotlight on Stalking seminar, and a spiking conference which was held in Birmingham City Centre just recently in one of the University of Birmingham. One of the University of Birmingham buildings called the Exchange. So a lot of work has been put into the first 90 days. I've certainly been very busy, I hope you can agree. But what am I going to do in the future? Because this is obviously what's really important for you. Now, victim voice work has already started. I've started engaging with victim groups. So victim support, for example, are collating different victim feedback, and we're looking to set up a number of forums. So we're going to have a number of forums later on in the year to hear from our different communities. I also have support services who are also bringing together victims groups. So exactly when we talk about the fact of people not being able to report, I want to hear why people feel that. What is it those blocks? Because are there things we need to address? And quite clearly, I'd say there are. And what can we do to do that, to make sure that all of our victims within our communities feel that they can report and get the support that they should? I've been identifying and setting an action plan with all our criminal justice service agencies to improve the victim code compliance. So every criminal justice agency, the police, the CPS, the courts, HMPPS, all of those rights I showed you, they each have their own right that they have to deliver on. So it's talking to them. How are you delivering on it? Okay, but I don't want to hear just a tick box. I'm being really brutally honest here. I don't want a tick box. I want to know, what does that look like? Does that land for our victims? Have you actually provided that support? Has that person, if they're going to court, feel that they're informed and supported? I'm leading on a programme with our, I've put there the VCOP, so that's Victim Code of Compliance Communication Plan. So we're working with our comms team. So from our advisory board that we held in Lloyd House, we have a number of ideas, and this is how we're going to plan to inform and empower our communities. So we'd like to have, obviously, a public campaign. There are also, I think, certain community groups that we need to make sure that might not be able to access certain standard modes of social media, for example. How are we reaching them? How are we reaching our communities that might be slightly more isolated or marginalised? Because it's really important we don't lose sight of those communities. I'll be leading the West Midlands as a sort of statement, really, to be the best region to support victims' access to justice. That's a bit of a bold statement because I get on very well with the London Victims Commissioner, but I'm taking her on here, this one, that the West Midlands is going to be leading on the victim services and access to justice. On top of that, I'm going to make sure that we've got visibility on a national picture. So I'll make sure that our needs are being met. Things that we're discussing about today, Commissioner himself obviously has that picture on the national side, but alongside that he'll have me on the victim's voice, making sure that when the different commissioners and different MPs and ministers, that they know what it is in the West Midlands that we need. And then finally, I'm going to be continuing to develop my victim and witness delivery group and the victim commission meetings to make sure that all of our agencies here are doing their best, that I'm holding them to account, I'm asking the questions, and also delivering a plan. I'm not here to be combative, is that a correct word? Yeah. I'm here to try and get together on a joint agenda. It's not here, you know, we can all work together. I think every single person, it's like every single person in the police force, nobody joins the police to not want to get justice. None of our service agencies are there to not do their best for victims. Everybody joins their particular, you are all here today because you care about the people in the areas that you live in. So let's make sure that we can all come together. So on that note, I will say thank you and I will invite any questions. Now, after myself, if there are questions about our victims team, because I am part, by the way, of a larger victims team, of which Mr. Simon Down, who's been amazing with the slides, thank you, Mr. Down, it heads up in terms of our victims policy. So when we talk about that, Simon will be able to give you an outline of that. But for a moment, are there any questions that anybody would like to put forward to me?
Natalie, can I start by saying thank you? for telling your personal story. I think it's all of us who've heard that and what you've gone through. It's it's unbelievable. But you're here to tell us that story. I hope your daughter's doing well, and I think you've got you've got the passion for this role. I think the Commissioner has chosen well going forward, Commissioner, on this. I think you really need a victim of crime, and this was a horrible crime, as you've just heard on that. But thank you. I'll open up to members first. Councillor Murray.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your hard work. Very much appreciated. It's not easy task. I know that. And now, when the victim report to the police and police put the case forward to the CPS, how, according to your experience, how long does how long does it take to decide whether the culprit should be charged or not?
In terms of the actual timeline, I might actually ask my colleague here to give more realistic. It's actually an ongoing conversation as well, if I am correct, that between the police and the CPS, because it's all about making sure a case file, before they get to a final decision, that it is a discussion point, and that obviously then depends on the complexity of the crime. Chief Superintendent, you've got.
Yeah, so it very much varies from case to case. So sometimes, for example, with very serious crimes, we'll have discussions and meet with the CPS while the offender's in custody, and the charging decision might be made that day, or they may be released on bail while those considerations are made. So it's very much a function of how serious the crime is, what the background of the suspect or offender is in terms of if they pose that ongoing risk to the community or a specific victim, or whether they're likely to answer bail in the future if they were released. Some people have a track record of not appearing at court. And then a decision will be made around in that space, and then it'll be on a case-by-case basis. So it's very difficult to sort of make a general statement around exactly how long it takes to get decisions from the CPS.
Councillor Bellingham. Councillor Bellingham, you did signal you want to talk. Speak.
It's just a quick question, because your report was so concise. We don't need to know much more. But one of the things I would think the victims are suffering from, certainly in the last few years, is the amount of time it's taking not only to get to court, but then for dates to be moved. And it must seem like a never-ending cycle to them. Is that something, one of the areas that you'll be looking at to, for want of a better word, hold their hand to make sure they know they're not forgotten?
Thank you very much for that. As you rightly state, the court issue is significant, and it is one that's being looked at from a government level. There are obviously the Brian Levinson recommendations around how they're going to actually deal with courts in terms of which ones will now go to a magistrate, that the bar will change in order to try and get cases through quicker. And there is a discussion point which we'll be feeding into as well, and my opinion will be going in alongside the other commissioners, about how we feel about juryless crimes, juryless trials where appropriate, because obviously there's certain crimes that would still require a jury. But it is a key thing that I wish to be taking on, because the court delays are hugely significant. They are impacting on victim attrition rates, where obviously we know that victims in the end will pull out because the delay seems so long and people understandably want to move on with their lives. And we know it's impacting on all aspects of the criminal justice procedure, even down to expert witnesses, because as you say, if a case gets pulled, the expert witness in the end might not want to be involved on a longer scale because they keep moving court dates. So it is a real key issue, and it is something that's on my agenda very much to be discussing where we stand on a local level, but feeding into that national discussion piece. Commissioner, is there anything you want to add about the courts or?
No, I don't think, Simon. I think you've kind of outlined that very comprehensively. Yes, I mean, plainly, the Crown Court delays are a significant challenge for victims and witnesses within our criminal justice system. And there's an old adage, isn't there, that justice delayed is justice denied. And it is therefore imperative that the criminal justice system operates, as the term suggests, a system, because the system is often only as good as its weakest link. And if we have Crown Court trials in connection with which people are often waiting for some years now for that trial to come to fruition, then, as Natalie says, that plainly impacts on victims and witnesses and attrition, and that is not good for justice. We do need investment in our criminal justice system, and that includes policing, it includes the Crown Prosecution Service, the court system, probation and prisons.
Can I, sorry, just add to that as well? It's, you know, it is to say something on the national picture, because it is requiring the investment. We're obviously needing as well more, you know, county court, Crown Court judges as well to come through. And this is part of the whole bigger picture of what we need to be doing, as Commissioner says, to be lobbying for more money coming from government, because we're now getting to a critical point. The great thing is that it is becoming a national discussion, and I'll be using the strength of my position in order to add to that, to put pressure on the government to be able to actually solve this before we are in a point of crisis.
But, Commissioner, you did set up a criminal justice board to make sure that victims weren't forgotten. But here we are 2 years down the line talking about funding. I mean, I take it there must have been some deliverable actions with you setting that up. And that was to hear the voice of victims, to ensure that they were not stuck in the system.
Well, thanks, Chair, but that's exactly why, for example, I was the first Police and Crime Commissioner in the country to appoint a Victims Commissioner when I was first elected. I've now followed that appointment up with the appointment of Natalie. I think you will agree that Natalie is a powerful advocate for the rights and welfare of victims in the West Midlands, and I've always made it very clear that a top priority for me is ensuring that the rights and welfare of victims are at the very forefront of not only policing but the wider criminal justice system. That's why I invest £6.7 million into victim support services. That's why I do, together with my victims team and my victims advocate, we do lobby government, we do campaign, we do seek additional resources for victims. We do, for example, open dedicated victim support funds, just as I outlined in my opening, in terms of making available that additional investment for victims of hidden harm crimes, for example. So and that's why I am ensuring that we are embarking on a major campaign in the West Midlands around making sure that we are able to drive compliance around the Victims Code. As Natalie said, the Victims Code has been around for 19 years. 19 years. The fact that that's not embedded within our criminal justice system is, to me, inexplicable. It's inexcusable, and it is unacceptable that criminal justice agencies, including policing, are not able to evidence that that is happening day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. After 19 years, we need to make sure that we get a grip of this, and that the Victims Code is firmly embedded across policing and our wider criminal justice system. And I repeat, that's why we're embarking on a major campaign to drive that. And in addition, that is in part driven by the additional duties and powers that have been given to me as a consequence of the Victims and Prisoners Act 2023. So that has given me some additional leverage as Police and Crime Commissioner to hold the criminal justice system to account in circumstances where I didn't have quite those same powers previously. And absolutely, I will be using the abilities and the powers and the duties that I have available to me to hold policing to account in connection with that. And as you say, the local criminal justice board that I chair, in terms of holding the wider criminal justice system to account as well.
Councillor Henley.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. So thanks loads for sharing your story. Personally, I've had domestic violence in my own family, so I've seen that side of it. So totally not as horrific as yours, but it's all, yeah. Until that actually happens to you, everything what's out there, you don't look at it or go down there until it actually happens. So I look forward to how the comms are going to come out to reach people so they know where to go. Because, like I say, unless you need it, you're going to ignore it. That's never going to happen to me. So I welcome that. A lot of it, which is important, is domestic violence with women and children. But there's a lot of men out there as well. And that's a small area that's never or very rarely promoted or pushed out there. It's a lot of men sit in silence. I run a men's mental health group, and there's men out there who are sat there, don't know where to go, they're scared to go anywhere, they feel weak. Is there anything planned for that side of it as well?
Thank you for that. And sorry that obviously with your experiences, and I will say any crime and any form of domestic violence, domestic abuse is horrific, no matter what. And also thank you for the fact that you run a men's mental health, because you're absolutely correct in saying, I mean, the statistics are 1 in 6 men will experience domestic abuse, 1 in 4 women. And that's whether that's even fully reported. As we know, there'll be a lot of men who will not report for different reasons. We do actually, one of the services we commission is Ask Mark, which is with our Black Country Women's Aid. And that is a service dedicated to supporting male victims of domestic abuse. But I agree with you, it's another part of what we do need to obviously make sure and ensure that we're looking at, that we do have sufficient provision. I have some, say, colleagues and friends, you know, friends who work, who have been victims, male victims of domestic abuse, and I've seen the impact firsthand that it's had on them, and they're very brave the way they stand forward and share their story. When I talk about the victim's journey, about stigma and culpability, scrutinise, guilt, shame, you know, it does go, unfortunately, hand in hand, as I feel, with all forms of domestic abuse. And that stigma, I feel, is still greater with our society, you know, at times for men, which is why I think there is a greater silence. So we do have, I say, Ask Mark. Would you like to? Yeah.
Yeah, and no, thank you, Councillor, for raising that. And we are actually in the process of commissioning additional victim support services for male victims of domestic abuse. So we're looking to recruit, I think, 4.5 independent domestic abuse advocates who will be providing a dedicated service for men who are victims of domestic abuse.
Thank you. Councillor Holt.
If I can just say, well done in terms of sharing your personal story. It's been very profound, and it's been very, very, very good to listen to. When you woke up in that hospital bed on that first moment and you were surrounded by police officers, I get the impression that you didn't have the support that probably you needed at that point. You didn't say so, but what would be the suggestion you would make in terms of how victims should be better supported in that particular situation?
Thank you, and it is a key point. On a personal note, with my particular circumstances, my family were being kept away because it made such national headlines. Whilst I was in my induced coma over that sort of period, it was only overnight until the following day, which obviously meant, in order to not dilute the evidence that I was going to give, alter, amend, anything else, is restricted about who could speak to me. I do feel quite strongly, and obviously I'll come to, on a personal note, it would have been nice to have somebody there to support when that news was being dropped. I think in the particular circumstance for myself, it was just, like I say, very difficult with my family. We're actually all being interviewed at that same point. But yes, it was very lonely. I'm going to be really honest. I'm not going to pretend differently. And it was very isolating. So you can imagine, I'm taking on board the news. I have a child who's fighting for her life. She might not make the next 48 hours. And then being told that it was my partner who had done the act, and my head was absolutely spinning. I think it's something I want to look forward. Obviously, that was 9 years ago. I'll obviously turn to Chief Superintendent in a moment to ask whether that would still be the same, because it would have been nice to have had a personal support there in order because it was a very lonely and isolating time, and it is again part of the journey that would be looked at. I obviously am only speaking from my own personal experience. Superintendent North, how would it happen?
I mean, it's difficult to say. I mean, 9 years on, you would like to think we do have a greater victim focus, but if I'm honest, we've also got, we still maintain that focus on bringing the offender and the suspect to justice. And it sounds like in that context of your situation, that's what the police were very focused on, which I suppose is understandable, but the balance that we need to strike in West Midlands Police is that I think we could have achieved that and perhaps done it more sensitively with more support. So we're always sort of challenging ourselves around trying to get that right balance. But I suppose our primary role and function is to bring the perpetrator for what is an absolutely horrendous crime to justice and make sure that they are held to account. And we'll always strive to get that balance through those processes. In terms of the broader part around the victim's rights, we're trying to systemize that through our work. So in terms of where we record crime, we've always recorded the modus operandi, the time, the date, but we also now on our systems record the contract that should be made with the victim, how often they want to be updated, when they want to be updated, how they should be updated, whether they've been updated around key events like when the offender's been arrested, if the offender's released on bail, if the offender's charged, when the court date is, if at the point that the case is filed. So these victims' rights, where we've been a lot of emphasis, don't just apply to very serious or high-end cases. It's across the spectrum of, and the volumes of crime that we deal with. Is always recognise the role of the victim and the specific impact in that individual case on that individual victim, so that we raise our standards across the board.
Just to add to that as well, and it's about the communication. Actually, Councillor Memmy, it goes back to your point about the CPS. I think when you ask about timelines, it's also probably because how long will a victim be waiting? And because it is how long's a piece of string, the important part that I wanted to make sure is being upheld and holding the police account to is not just saying, yes, we're going to contact a victim, whether it's agreed weekly, 2 weekly or monthly, depending on the case, but that communication is happening, and it's happening in this way that a victim wants to hear it, whether is it going to be a text message, is it an email, what is the most appropriate, will it be a short phone call? Obviously there is pressures for the police, so it might be a text or an email, but because of exactly what you're pointing at, if it takes a long time for CPS to get a decision, that victim is sitting there, because whilst time's passing on, what might be 2 weeks for the rest of us here goes quickly. For a victim, your life has just stopped. Your life is being held at that point. And, yeah, and that's exactly what I thought you could mean, and that's why I wanted to make sure. And, as Chief Superintendent North has quite rightly said, it is something the police are really actually monitoring and making sure. But when we talk about those measures within Connect, I've spoken to one of the assistant chiefs, and it's good to see. I have had word from the assistant chief. They don't want to just see the metrics, because I'm a bit like Councillor Henley as far as metrics are one thing, but actually, are those still landing? So we're talking about how we combine the metrics within their system that come to the Police Connect system, along with what we're hearing back from victims' voices. So is what's going in actually what's being felt, and can we bring the two together? And actually, Councillor Holt, my family were nearly in trouble with me, to be fair, because I didn't realise they'd been told to keep away from me. So I was a little bit miffed when I came out of my coma to none of my family being there. But luckily, I was obviously late to explain, because I did think, well, in all the films, when people come out of a coma, their family are there. So I was a little bit disappointed I didn't have that moment. But luckily, I've later learned my mum wasn't in as much trouble as she could have been with me.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Natalie, I'm delighted to meet you this afternoon, really. And I have to congratulate Simon Foster, because I am a firm believer in the right person getting the right job. And he's definitely got an expert sitting right next to him this afternoon, so thank you. My question is, and it comes from a good place because I'm a daughter and I have brothers, I'm an auntie, and I'm a mother to a son. And I am really quite intrigued in how you will be working with male victims, and in particular, if you have men on your team?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the congratulations. That is very, that does mean a lot. And in terms of when we're talking about, so when we have like our advisory groups, for example, so what I'm drawing advice from is very much a mixed across different genders, across different ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, social economic backgrounds, because with the work that I do outside of this, with my young person, I work with a lot of young men, and I do know the barriers from that they have in terms of reporting and the social pressures that go alongside. In terms of our team, I'll let Simon sort of talk about the structure of our victims team.
Yeah, thank you. So the victims team that I manage, so I have 5 people. I have a manager and then 4 policy officers is what the substantively funded posts are. And with 5 posts, realistically, we're never going to represent the wide communities and people of the West Midlands. So the way that we ensure that we have an understanding of the needs of the varied communities of the West Midlands, including men, is to be consulting with victims, consulting with various stakeholders, providers, so on and so forth. Yeah, as it happens, they are all ladies. Obviously, I'm a man, so there is a bit of balance there in that sense. But really, it's about the consultation, the consulting on our specifications, ensuring that when we go out to tender, that we've got the right service that is going to meet everyone's needs. And so certainly with the male lead for service, we've absolutely done that, and I've had a significant hand in that as well. And the other thing I should mention, of course, is our quality impact assessment processes. That's where we obviously make sure we very purposefully consider all of the different equality groups and potential equality impacts, positive and negative, and ensure that we're taking appropriate action to resolve any issues and maximise any positive benefits.
Adele Brown.
Good afternoon. I just want to say thank you to Natalie, because I've seen your work in prisons and the feedback that he's received is just phenomenal. So you do some great work. I think my other questions really are for Simon more than anything, based on your plan and commitments. So in the victim contact, you said you're going to hold the wider CJS accountable to your local crime commissioning boards. And you've talked about your extra powers that you've got available to you to now undertake that sort of extra scrutiny. So if it doesn't meet your standards, or it doesn't work to what you've done, what is the next steps then, I suppose, in regards to getting them to be more engaged in that victim code? What would that look like? My other question is, you've discussed meaningful sanctions for non-compliance with the victim code of practice, ensuring accountability across the system. So who are the meaningful sanctions for? We talk about West Midlands Police, or you talk about on a wider scale with criminal justice. And what do those meaningful sanctions look like? What have you got a view as to what they would look like? And finally, you've talked about inspectorates placing a focus on the delivery of victims' rights. So I suppose, what are the key areas that you'd like inspectorates to look at really when they're doing their inspections based on their framework? What would that look like for you in regards to those commitments?
Okay, so I'm just looking to focus in on the slide pack which has been shared with you, which does outline, I think, probably a response to most of the issues that you've asked for information about there. So I don't know if you have that slide pack in front of you, but if you do, it's the slide pack that Simon Down presented on at Appendix 1, Appendix 1 to Agenda Item 12. And if you're able to find your way to slide number 9, which is headed Victims Code, and you'll see that slide number 10 is the Victims Code, or a summary of it in any event, and then you've got a timeline around the Victims Code. But then, when you then move on to slide 12, you will see that talks about compliance with the Victims Code, and it talks about the Victims and Prisoners Act 2023 and the duty that places on criminal justice bodies and PCCs to keep compliance with the Victims Code under review. Now, in one sense, the additional leverage that has provided me with is welcome, but equally, in terms of the leverage it has provided me with, that has provided me with some constraints in terms of the way that has been set out in the Victims and Prisoners Act. But you'll see that who does the duty apply to? Well, it applies to the lead convener. That's specified to be the Police and Crime Commissioner. In addition to that, local criminal justice bodies and all local police forces in England and Wales, CPS, HMCTS, HMPPS, youth offending teams, and also non-territorial police forces as well. So what will the duty do? Well, it'll improve the monitoring of the delivery of the code amongst the bodies who have the most interaction with victims, improve transparency of the delivery of the code through publishing resulting code compliance data, improve delivery of the code, sharing through the sharing of best practice and a focus on improving performance. And then if you move on to the next slide, which is slide 13, again, code compliance, how will it work? Again, that process that's set out in the Victims and Prisoners Act is set out there. So criminal justice bodies will be required to collect and share the following, and that includes compliance metrics, victim feedback, self-reporting, and these three areas of compliance information will allow criminal justice bodies and PCCs to review the delivery of the code. And they'll come together to build a useful picture of the delivery of a code entitlement. And PCCs will be provided with funding for up to 2 senior data analysts per office to enable the collation and analysis of that information. I would just pause there to say that, as far as I'm aware, we have not yet taken delivery of that funding. However, it is something we are pursuing. So you'll see that there is an infrastructure there. And then moving on to slide 14, which sets out the governance process around all of that, which is around criminal justice bodies collecting specified metrics. Compliance information is then sent to police and crime commissioners to collate. That is then reported to the MOJ, and then there's code compliance information, which is then discussed at a national level. So you will see that there's an infrastructure provided for within the context of that Victims of Prisoners Act. So I'll be working within the framework, the constraints provided by that process set out in the Victims of Prisoners Act. In addition to that, I have my Accountability and Governance Board that meets monthly. That, I suppose, is the most public way in which I am able to hold the Chief Constable and West Midlands Police to account across a whole variety of different issues relating to my police and crime plan, but certainly that includes around victim code compliance as well. And of course, ultimately, I have the ability to employ a victims advocate who is also able to campaign very vocally about this particular issue. I mean, not only within the West Midlands, but across the country as a whole. So we then have an opportunity to have a very vocal voice around these issues. I mean, not only within our team, but also collectively across the country as well. I mean, that's why we've been working with, for example, the Domestic Abuse Commissioner and indeed lobbying and campaigning and calling for more resources, more leverage, more power, more influence within government around these issues as well. And that's why also I've been launching a major campaign around compliance with the Victims Code, because some of this is through formal legal powers as set out in the Victims and Prisoners Act, but some of it will also be utilising what you might call softer powers of influence and campaigning. And ultimately, I have the power to hold the Chief Constable to account. And ultimately, the West Midlands Police budget comes through me as Police and Crime Commissioner. So I want to see those aims and objectives implemented in the West Midlands. I want to see, for example, demonstrable, auditable, evidenced compliance with the Victims Code, both from a qualitative point of view and a quantitative point of view. So we're in the process of devising a victim insight platform, which is also going to provide us with additional information around the qualitative performance of Westminster Police as well, as far as it comes to complying with the Victims Code. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Natalie.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Adele. Nice to see you. I think one of the key things is the actual metrics. The issue we've got at the moment is that they haven't actually been sent down. So I've been doing part of my whole national picture is talking to the MOJ directly as well. And when we've asked for what the timeline is on what are the actual measurables metrics that are going to be enforced, we're now looking at a delay possibly until late 2026 or into 2027. However, coming into role, I'm really wanting to make sure, especially with our local criminal justice partner agencies, and that's why I'm saying it's about us coming together with that shared vision. It's agreeing locally. Let's not wait for these measures to come down, because at the end of the day, it's about doing the right thing, isn't it? And the right thing to do is to make sure that the code's being upheld. And I know already a lot of the partner agencies already, the courts will measure their compliance, CPS will look at their compliance. And when I'm in these meetings with them, I'm understanding, well, what is it you're actually measuring? And then having a really meaningful conversation of, well, if we haven't got a set target of what your compliance rate should be, whether it's 80, 90%, whatever, that you've met that right and how you're measuring it. But let's look how you're measuring it and what should we think it should look like? What should we aim for? So I think in the interim period, whilst we're waiting to see what the standardised metrics from the MOJ look like, it's having those local conversations and trying to sort of explore. And then that obviously would then be mandating about what, as you say, what will those penalties look like and things like that. It's still information evolving, which is really, really frustrating personally. But I'm learning that these things can sometimes be a bit slower, which doesn't help with my patience. But it is about making sure we bring this conversation on a local level. And as Commissioner rightly said, having me there to have those conversations and saying, let's not wait for a national directive on this, because it's about doing the right thing now, if that helps.
Thank you. Councillor Mower.
Thank you, Chair. Natalie, these last 45 minutes, you do not know how I have sat here. I hear your case. I'm not going to go through with it. I was on the bed for a year. This is not a natural feature. This is a knife wound. Over here is a knife wound. My leg, two people held it. One with a baseball bat shattered it. So I had rods through it. My wife was sleeping on the floor. You talk about being in a coma. You know how I felt? In a blood pool of it. JP is written on my... Did I get anything? Were those people brought to justice? Police had the evidence, verbal evidence, but again, I know that because I've been a magistrate for more than 25 years. Wasn't enough evidence to lock them up. They're still walking around. And I cannot, Commissioner, I cannot go campaigning on my own. I'm still frightened. I'm always looking back. I'm always with somebody. And my family, even today, will not let me go on my own. When I come here, obviously, these more modern cars get locked. I'm still looking around when I'm driving. So there are a lot of people out there, Natalie, who feel like me, haven't had the justice. They're still walking around. This code, Simon, you just said this code has been out 19 years. I have been around a long time. I was a councillor in Birmingham in the 80s. Remember Geoffrey Deere, Sir Geoffrey Deere, Lord Geoffrey Deere? I was police consultative chairman. So I had prominent positions, but I was still suffered. So let's now go out there. That's my message to you. So do not anybody suffer like I'm still suffering.
I have no words. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so, so sorry, genuinely, about what's happened to you. And I totally appreciate as well, as you say, the trauma it leaves, how your family feels, because it's not even just about the direct victim, it's about everybody around them, isn't it? And that is why it is so important we do this. And it'd be great, you know, it's having you alongside as well, you know, in part of this. And I look forward to further conversations with yourself, but I totally relate to you saying about checking and going around places, and it's a horrible, and I think unless you've lived it, you don't know it, and we don't want people in that position. And I'm so, so sorry as well that you haven't had that justice. So thank you very, very much. It honestly means a lot that you shared that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very mindful of the time here. We've got 10 minutes before I understand we have to vacate this room. Natalie, thank you very much. I think it's been very inspirational listening to you. I think if you could, we'd welcome you back. I think what we've touched upon it is the only time residents ever need to contact the police is in that moment of emergency. Most people will never need the police. And it's those actions going forward are very important. What we hear from our residents, and in other cases, it's sometimes that communication is poor. And if you're here to make that better, and that's what we want to hear. You've only been in post, you know, for 3 months. I'm not going to throw a lot of questions at you. I think that would be wrong. I think it'd probably be best if the Commissioner agrees that we call Natalie back in the near future. When we look at some of the services, by that time, some of the services that Simon has commissioned, you'll be able to visit them and obviously see if those are making a difference in our communities, whether they're delivering on those actions and supporting the victims. But thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And as you say, I would welcome, yes, the invitation to return. And I am already visiting services, but even today with the discussions, you know, it's exploring about making sure we are supporting all our communities in the way that we should. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, we'll note the contents of the report. Thank you. I'll move on to item 14, which is the panel programme agenda for 2025-2026. And I'll invite Sarah Fradgley, the lead panel officer, to present this item.
So the outline work programme is within your papers today, and that has been structured around the statutory duties. And then we've also got in the appendix a list of items that have been identified in a member workshop. So we have, since the member workshop, been speaking to the Commissioner's office, and we suggest that the September meeting focuses in on neighbourhood policing as a deeper dive into that topic and all the issues that we've mentioned some of them today. The November meeting, we've got some capacity for some items. Now, whether I'm conscious of time, so perhaps members want to have a think about the priority items, and the Chair and the Vice Chair can have a conversation about programming the rest of the work programme. So the report is there really for you to note and to confirm that you're happy with the September agenda item as suggested.
Sure, members, we'll all agree on that, and then we'll work out a programme. You're happy to contact myself or Councillor Taylor if you have any thoughts on any agenda item, future agenda items you may want to bring back to the panel. Okay, agenda item 15, which is just to note the dates of the next meetings. So we're next back, obviously, on the 8th of September, and we will be at Solihull at Metropolitan Borough Council. So thank you to our colleagues for hosting us then. Urgent business. There is no urgent business of the panel. Therefore, I will bring this meeting to a close. And can I thank all of you for attending today? Thank you very much. And have a good evening. Thank you.